And this is a four-man breakaway that is just about to be caught by the peloton. And we've just had a rider attack from the field, Martin Kaiser of the Vacances Soleil team, and they are also just 2 kilometers away from the day's only intermediate sprint point. So a lot happening here. Still a long way from the actual finish of the stage. Steve Schlanger, Todd Gagulski, as always, glad to have you with us here on Universal Sports for the first of the final 4 days of this year's Giro.
Everybody into the points that are on offer, and that's why Sky is on the front right now, trying to bring back that breakaway at the last second before the intermediate sprint, because Mark Cavendish leads that classification over Joaquim Rodriguez by 1 slim point, and Rodriguez will not be able to get any of those points on this sprint today.
Cavendish wearing the red jersey as the points leader, but Joaquim Rodriguez in pink as the overall Giro leader. And these are our 4 men at the front, just dangling now off the front end of the main field with 1K to go to the sprint. Manuel Boaro is the rider for Saxo Bank, Steph Clement for Rabobank, Pier Paolo De Negri for Farnese Vini, and Angelo Pagani of Colnago. So inside of 1K from the intermediate sprint, the peloton comes up on the 4 leaders, whose lead really never got over 3 minutes after they went away 20K into the stage.
And today's day, a short day at under 100 miles, but this is pretty much of a downhill day. This is one of only 2 small uphills the whole day, and it's the last of them.
Now the red jersey of Mark Cavendish sitting behind a few Team Sky teammates at the front. He's third wheel right now, as a matter of fact. So looking for the maximum points at the intermediate sprint to protect that red points jersey.
He's have to go for it a lot in these flatter days, because Rodriguez will have ample opportunity the next 2 days with the summit finishes to get points, and Cavendish will be nowhere in sight.
He's got a teammate in front of him, Cavendish, starting to get up on the pedals now, anticipating this sprint, which comes exactly at 65 kilometers left to go to the finish.
And just have a look at how much this is fracturing the group, as this is a big effort by men here. Cavendish being challenged.
On the wheel of the Lampre rider, after his teammate had set him up. Almost looking like the end of a stage.
Unreal.
Now Cavendish is going to pull ahead, and doesn't seem like there's going to be as much of a challenge as it looked like a moment ago.
Cavendish keeping a close eye behind, not doing any extra work for that sprint, because he still has the win of the stage to be thinking about now.
All right, so Cavendish is the first rider through the intermediate sprint at the front of the race on stage 18. There's the pink jersey of race leader Joaquim Rodriguez. So it's a day for the sprinters. The break has already been caught. Still a long way to go, but we are now underway with stage number 18 at the Giro d'Italia. Mark Cavendish just sprinting through the day's only intermediate sprint. First rider of the peloton to roll through, getting maximum points here on stage 18 at the Giro. Steve Schlanger, Todd Gagulski, as always, good to have you with us on board live on Universal Sports for a very short day, just 149 kilometers. And these are riders who are counterattacking just after the intermediate sprint. 61K left to go, and let's take you to the profile and the map for stage number 18. Starting in far northern Italy and heading south, almost downhill most of the day.
The day definitely trending down as it goes over the 93 miles. The guys have already been over the 1 intermediate sprint, which had a little bit of a climb before it. But from here to the finish, for the gentlemen, downhill all the way. Very straightforward run in to the finish line. No big corners. Look for a big bunch finish, and everybody will be looking at Cavendish.
And the first of the final 4 days shows you that it's trending downhill almost from start to finish before 2 big climbing days coming up on stage 19 and 20.
The guys will certainly appreciate this little bit of a day off for their legs, other than the sprinters, because the next 2 stages are brutal.
And this is live at the front of the field with just about 60 kilometers left to go. We'd had a 4-man breakaway that was established 20 kilometers into the stage, but because of the hard tempo set by Team Sky, and Mark Cavendish to try and get the top points at the intermediate sprint. They were brought back much earlier than a break would typically be reeled in on a sprinter stage like this. So they were caught just prior to the intermediate sprint. Now, after Cavendish got the max points at that sprint, we've seen other guys counterattacking off the front, and we're waiting for the day's second breakaway to form up the road.
Cavendish picked up another 8 points on that intermediate sprint, so unofficially that makes him 9 points ahead of Rodriguez, the overall race leader in pink. But Rodriguez has the next 2 stages to pick up a bunch of points, and Cavendish will be hard-pressed to pick up any.
So Cavendish takes care of business at the intermediate sprint, but as far as the overall general classification, Joaquim Rodriguez is still the leader, spending his 7th day in the pink jersey, and with 4 days now left to go, it's really becoming a 4-man battle for the overall victory.
There's no doubt that there's not really anybody else within striking distance of first place on the podium. And when you saw the way Basso was forcing the issue yesterday, trying to get rid of Rodriguez, Hejjedal, and Scarpone, he's very strong, but he doesn't seem to have the pop to make that final selection. And Hejjedal right now is winning the war.
And there is Joaquim Rodriguez. He's worn the pink jersey more than anybody else at this year's Giro. 2 wheels behind him, the red jersey of Mark Cavendish, who is a favorite for today's stage. Last opportunity for the sprinters, but there aren't many genuine sprinters left in the field. A lot have pulled out and gone home.
And you'll already notice how much work Geraint Thomas is doing on the front for Team Sky and Mark Cavendish. That's because this breakaway got away right after that intermediate sprint, and they really have the throttle buried right now.
Adam Hansen leading the way here for Lotto Belisol. Also Marco Pinotti in there for BMC. Olivier Kaizen, the Belgian, Mache Bodnar, and the FDJ rider there in the all-white was Sandy Cassar, who almost rode into the pink jersey earlier in the race. Just missed out during a breakaway stage.
Cassar almost made it happen. He was the virtual race leader for a period, but came up about 30 seconds short late in the race as the gap was closed down. And that was actually a day where Rodriguez and Katusha had decided it was okay to let their jersey go. They didn't want to defend it, and they also didn't want Rodriguez to have all the obligations with interviews and so on as the race leader for a couple of days.
Really stretched out through the field here. Team Sky once again back on front, setting a pretty brisk tempo. Hard for a breakaway to stay clear on a stage like this when the sprinters know this is the final opportunity for them to battle it out at the front. And when it's downhill almost all day, you don't often see this kind of a profile at a Grand Tour. Many times you'll see a flat stage, but to be downhill from start to finish, it's very unusual, and it makes it difficult for a breakaway to stay clear because the geography just doesn't lend itself to that.
That's right. The critical mass of the peloton just really rolls along at a high rate of speed. So to get away from them, it will take a massively concerted effort by a group of guys that's very smooth together.
And you see just how close they are. Just seconds for that group ahead of the field.
And look how strung out this peloton is. Little bit of a wind out of the left, so it's single file. They're all in the right gutter. If there were a little bit more of a crosswind at this pace, the field would turn into total chaos.
It's going to be a very fast stage. They've already caught 1 breakaway. They're about to catch the 2nd breakaway, and we're just inside of 60K left to go. It's downhill all day, and only 149 kilometers from start to finish to begin with.
And Sky had to bring this move back right away because it had too many powerhouse riders in it. And if they're going to let a group go right now to settle things down, it has to be a smaller group that's easier to bring back late in the race for Cavendish to get a win.
We come back to our 4 leaders, whose margin has come down to under 40 seconds now, and they are under 40K from the finish of stage number 18. Again, it is likely to come down to some form of a field sprint, but so many of the legitimate sprinters we started this race with have already gone home. Guys like Tor Hushaw, Tyler Farah, JJ Hayedo, Teo Boss, Mark Renshaw, Matt Goss, Romain Feliu, Daniela Benatti, Gianni Mearsman, and Arnaud Demar.
That's
so
like
that's
the who's
quite
who.
a list. Yeah,
that's the who's who of sprinters right there.
It's a laundry list.
Almost none left.
So those are the guys that are gone. But the sprinter's still here. Of course, Mark Cavendish, Francesco Chicchi of Omega Pharma Quickstep, Francisco Ventoso of Movistar, who has already won a sprint at this year's Giro, Robbie Hunter of Garmin Barracuda, Sasho Modolo, Fabio Sabatini, Andrea Guardini, and let us not forget Androne's Roberto Ferrari, who's been quite active, crashing out Cavendish and also winning a stage. As you look down on Ryder Hesjedal, number 95 for Garmin Barracuda, second on the GC.
Quite active for Roberto Ferrari is certainly one way to describe the race for him so far. And for many guys in the field, active in a way that it was not very professional nor very pleasant.
Now, when you consider the sprinters that are left, and it's obvious that Cavendish is the favorite, but you also just never know. After over 2.5 weeks of racing, a lot of big mountains, including the 4 climbs they did yesterday, how are the legs feeling? And when they have to hit that top end speed, do they have it? It's not like it's early in the race and everybody is fresh and ready to go, as there's Robbie Hunter in the multicolored jersey, Garmin Barracuda's top sprinter now that Tyler Farah has crashed out of the race. You just never know how they're feeling at this point.
You really don't. It all comes down to how much work they've been doing, what kind of 2 weeks they've had leading into this, and also the unknown things that we don't hear about sometimes. Guys that maybe are a little bit sick at this point or nursing a little bit of an injury, and they don't want anybody to know about that.
Here's our 4 leaders again, and the gap coming down closer to half a minute. But that being said, it's still hard to bet against Cavendish because it's a straight run-in, it's flat. Team Sky is going to lead the way at some point and set him up. So this is one of those sprints that is not based on some kind of a technical finish. It's based on speed. So as long as Cavendish doesn't mistime it or somehow get boxed in along the barriers, hard to believe he's not going to win his 4th stage at this year's race.
I'm with you on that, and I think the chief challengers, I would have to think, would be Chicchi, Ferrari. Those guys in particular maybe could put up the biggest fight.
I mean, nobody's been able to match Cavendish's speed. It's simple as that. I mean, it's nothing that's very difficult to try and take away from what's happening in the sprints. It's very clear-cut how things are coming down.
That's right. The stage that Ferrari won, Cavendish had to grab 2 big handfuls of brakes in the final corner, and Ferrari just swooped by on the inside, kept his momentum, and that was it. Chicchi was second in one stage, but that's the only time we've seen him up there at all. And we know Chicchi's fast, but he just hasn't really been a factor.
And the stages that other sprinters have won, like Francisco Ventoso of Movistar, those have been the stages where Cavendish crashed out.
Yep.
So nobody's beat him head-to-head when he's been near the front.
Well, it's no real surprise that nobody's beat him head-to-head because he's the fastest guy on 2 wheels. I think he's the best sprinter that's ever been on a bicycle on the road, and Cavendish is a guy that has to have a bad day, and other teams have to have a perfect day in order to beat him.
Munis Navratilakis in that multicolored jersey for Garmin Barracuda. Garmin riding behind Katusha, which is the way the teams are positioned in the GC. Ryder Hesjedal, who is second on the GC, is right behind Navratilakis. Had a terrific opening time trial. Wore the pink jersey, now helping to try and put Hesjedal in the pink jersey that belongs to Joaquim Rodriguez, who's sitting a couple of wheels ahead of him. So Omega Pharma Quickstep now with a couple of riders in the light blue and white coming to the front, riding for their sprinter Francesco Chicchi, who just hasn't done much in the sprint so far at this year's race. He came in as one of the top contenders, but really has never been a factor.
Sometimes you have it, sometimes you don't. And we know how chaotic these field sprints are. We've seen a lot of crashes in them. That's a clear illustration as to how much bumping and jostling for position there is. And if you just make a little mistake, you can lose 10 or 20 wheels just like in a matter of moments.
So you really think Cavendish is the best of all time?
I do, yeah.
Even going back to Pataki at his best or Mario Cipollini, when all of those sprinters were in their prime, you think if they all had a head-to-head battle that Cavendish would be the best out of the group?
Yes. I think Cavendish is the greatest sprinter that's ever been in professional cycling. He has proven that he can do it with the lead-out train But more importantly, he's proven that he can do it without the lead-out train. Taylor Phinney back here at the car, grabbing some refreshments. And doing it with the lead-out train is important because that's not a free ride either. They have to have the confidence in him, and he has to direct them and tell them what he wants.
So Taylor Phinney picking up some items from the team car. Make his way back up to the field momentarily as our 4 leaders roll through town. Just over 30K from the finish and a 40-second lead on that peloton. You will never find more pink balloons anywhere in the world than you do in May in Italy.
Not even at your daughter's birthday.
I tell you what, Chuck E. Cheese gives them a run for their money, but still, I don't think there's that many pink balloons as you see in the towns at the Giro. Mentioned the variety of overall race leaders we've had at this year's Giro, but stage wins as well have been spread around. 8 different nationalities have won stages, 12 different teams. We've had 8 first-time Grand Tour stage winners at this year's Italian Grand Tour. And 5 different riders have held the pink jersey. So the wealth has been distributed all across the board. That's the latest man, Joaquin Rodriguez, to wear pink. He's worn it more than anybody else. This is now his 7th day in the Maglia Rosa.
NetApp guys on the right side of the screen. They've got Daniel Shorn, their sprinter, who's been in the mix in the top 10 a couple of times so far. They'll be looking for an opportunity today.
Lampre with a lot of the team gathered here at the back.
This does not look particularly good for this squad to see their whole team off the back like this. So the question is, where is Michele Scarponi?
Yeah, that's the only reason that so many riders would be dropping back, you would think.
That's what I would think.
Not going to wait for anybody else. That's Adriano Malori there, number 5, a guy who also wore the pink jersey at this year's race. It's one of the ones that's easy to forget about.
Well, he didn't spend a lot of time in the pink, but he said he enjoyed it. The brief time it was on his shoulders.
6 Lampre riders there, spread out a little bit. And that's the reason.
It's Michele Scarponi right there.
So Scarponi was back on the side of the road.
He still has his frame number on, so it's not a new bike, but maybe some kind of mechanical problem that was taken care of. And he just went blowing right by his teammate there. Maybe a little bit of panic in the Italian team's leader, but he needs to just chill out a little bit. His guys will get him back into the mix. This should not be a problem for him.
He was disappointed yesterday as he lost contact near the summit of the final climb, was cramping, and then had to really ride on the descent by himself just to regain contact with the leaders inside the final 5K.
It was actually a phenomenal job that he made it back. It looked to me like his race was over, and he stopped pedaling. He was massaging his quads, and he got it back together and made it back up.
7 Lampre riders there.
Well, no real big deal for them. If there were a climb coming up, this could be catastrophic for Scarponi, but if there's no climb, all they need to do is get him back into the bunch and then slowly move him to the front. He'll be able to move with his entire team a little bit from car to car, but when you have the whole team like this, they don't tend to spend as much time on any one car as right now. They're looking at the back bumper of Team Sky.
Now Lampre, one of only 5 teams with all 9 riders still at the race. Mark Cavendish in the red jersey for Team Sky. His squad has lost a few along the way. Only 5 teams have not had any riders pull out of the Giro to this point. We've lost 29 guys altogether. And Lampre, almost in team time trial fashion, pacing Michele Scarponi back up to the field. And is chasing these 4 riders, whose gap has come down to 23 seconds with 18 kilometers left to go.
Certainly the field is roaring down the motorway here. As you can see, all the guys at the back of the field, single file. That tells you how fast it is. Guys at the front still jockeying for position, so it's a little bit more mushroomed at the front. But they're definitely hauling today.
Scarponi, number 1. 136 down on the GC. It's going to be tough for him to win this race. He is the defending champion by default. when Alberto Contador lost his title last year. But Scarponi really wanted to win on the road this year because he finished over 6 minutes behind Contador last year, so he doesn't feel like he really earned that pink jersey. He was presented with a pink jersey just 2 days prior to the start of this race, but he wants to win it, not just be handed it.
Well, there's a huge difference between getting second in a race and winning. And certainly Scarponi knows that. He's won a lot of races in his day, including some stage races, but to win the Giro on the road would be massive for him.
Got his work cut out. Blue jersey of our mountains leader, Matteo Rabottini, with the yellow helmet. Scarponi on the left-hand side of the road for Lapre, so he's back in the field. And they're bearing down on the 4 leaders with under 17K left to go to a likely field sprint. Again, Martin Kaiser, Steph Clement, Michael Delage, and Olivier Kaizen counter-attacking earlier in the stage after another breakaway was caught. And now here comes the field, led by Omega Pharma Quickstep and Team Sky. Mark Cavendish in the red jersey, about 6 wheels from the front.
One thing you always have to take into consideration in a field sprint like this is what teams will dedicate resources to their sprinters. So Rodriguez has a very good sprinter in Alex Kristoff on Katusha. He's been second to Cavendish in a stage, but they will not give him any help today because they're saving everything for Rodriguez for the GC.
A lot of guys on their own. Also Robbie Hunter for Garmin Barracuda. They're riding for Ryder Hesjedal in the GC, who sits just behind Joaquim Rodriguez, so Hunter will have to freelance. Not many teams even come to the Giro to begin with a lead out as strong as Cavendish has with Team Sky. So you get this deep, guys are tired, some have abandoned, so there's a ragtag group of riders left to try and help position a sprinter, but for the most part, the majority of the guys left who will contest this sprint are pretty much on their own.
And interestingly, the Sky train does have some split ambitions because they have 2 guys, 2 Colombians that are right in the mix in the top 10. And those guys, Henao and Uran, have been working up until now in those sprints.
This is Michael Delage of FDJ now attacking from the 4-man breakaway, just as they were about to be caught.
Well, Delage saying it's time to try and go it alone. We will often see this, although surprisingly there have been days where an entire break has been soaked up and nobody's tried an attack.
The problem for any late attacks like this is they're going to get down to a point inside of 10K where the road is so straight and so flat for so long that the field will be able to see him from quite a ways away. In fact, the final 5K are just about dead straight and flat, so they're going to be able to see him no matter how far up the road they get because they're not going to get that much time.
And certainly on a long straight away into a finish, experience counts because a lot of guys will jump too early. They'll be in great position. They'll misjudge it, and that will ruin their chances.
Presses de Jeux has already lost their top sprinter, Arnaud Demar, who was the youngest rider in the Giro at 20 years of age. He really suffered in the first week and a half. He's pulled out. Ironically enough, it was on stage 2 where Jeffrey Soup was leading out Demar, lost him in the chaos of the finale, and finished in the top 3.
Well, Delage, who's off the front right now, he being the teammate of Soup, you got 3 guys now getting caught. That leaves 1 man left, and the teammate of Jeffrey Soup. But the bookmakers have put Soup's odds at about 65 to 1 today. So they don't think he's going to win.
I don't know about this man either. Michael Delage is the only rider left from the 4-man move. And Lotto Bellasol. Olivier Kaizen was the rider in the breakaway that was just hanging on, but they were picked up.
This looks a bit like Lars Bach, the man who's been on the attack quite a bit late in the race, but I can't quite get a total view of him here.
It is Lars Bach, so another move for him, but hard to believe that guys are attacking with any serious ambitions at this point. It's going to be so tough to stay away. This is Delage at the front. Now Bach is behind him. The other breakaway riders who were with Delage for a while, they've been caught. So we have Delage, Bach, and then this field with Cavendish near the front in the red jersey, looking for his 4th individual stage win at this year's Giro d'Italia.
Cavendish, incidentally, if he wins this points jersey, or should I say holds it all the way to Milan, he will become only the 5th rider in history to win the points jersey in all 3 of the Grand Tours. And of the other 4, only one is still racing. That's Alessandro Petacchi. The others are Merckx, Laurent Jalabert, and Jamaldine Abdujaparov.
Back end of the field, and the pace quickening, so it's stretching out a bit with just over 11 kilometers left to go. Lars Bak just behind Delage now.
Bak had a very nice stage win on stage number 12. Came from a breakaway, attacked at just the right time, caught the other guys looking at each other, and soloed in for his only Grand Tour stage victory.
It was very much a tactical move that day, as so many of the other guys were looking around, trading attacks, and then Bak waited and timed it just right.
It was a fantastic ride by him on this powerhouse Lotto Belisol squad, and he started out the very first weekend riding extremely hard up in Denmark. Lots of moves then, but he's been in a couple since then as well.
So Delage, it looks like, was waiting for him, and now he'll try and make it a 2-man move. See how much time they can get with just over 10 kilometers left to go on stage 18.
Beautifully decorated here, all the scenery, unbelievable part of northern Italy. Unfortunately for the guys in the peloton, they don't get to see any of it.
And at the 10K banner for our 2 leaders.
Delage, I think, smartly realizing that Bak was coming up to him anyways, so why prolong the process where they're both in the wind? Sit up, let Bak make contact, and then they can trade pace and try and hold on.
Now it's going to be difficult with the sprinters knowing this is their last chance for a stage win. Mark Cavendish trying to protect the points jersey, also get another stage victory. He's kept his Team Sky at the front. Still 2 riders up there for them in the dark colors, but Omega Pharma Quickstep now has a rider at the very front in the light blue, riding for Francesco Chicchi, who was without a stage win at this year's race. As we slide to the back end of the field now. Under 10K. Don't exactly know what the gap is to Bak and Delage off the front. It's not a big one.
Yeah, we could be sure of that. Very small gap indeed, and it's still Team Sky on the front. Cavendish sitting about 10th wheel back there, right between Geraint Thomas behind him and Bernard Eisel in front of him.
So not much daylight for these 2 riders who still push forward in the final 9K as we come back with the sprint finish in a moment.
It was Alex Kristoff, the sprinter for Katusha. It's good to know where your competition is.
That's how close the field is to the 2 leaders, Delage and Bak.
Delage has not had a win since 2006 for the 26-year-old. He won stage number 1 of the Tour de l'Avenir, and today's going to be a pretty hard day to change that track record.
Half a dozen K left to go. And just about 10 seconds for these 2 riders, with Team Sky cranking the dial 1 more notch to pick up the tempo.
It's probably up to about 9 now, and it'll turn up to 11 here in a little bit.
Last opportunity for the sprinters at this year's Giro. Probably a shuttle waiting to take so many of them to the airport after today's stage, because there's 2 big mountain days on stages 19 and 20, and then the individual time trial on the final day.
Yeah, the big bus, not the little one.
Just over 5K left. There's a turn here, but then the road is pretty much straight and flat the rest of the way for the final 5 kilometers. Just a couple of roundabouts along the way, but that is it. All the way to the finish. Very straightforward.
Delage actually new on this squad, coming from the Lotto squad last year, but just a little tentative, tenuous gap for the 2 leaders.
Mark Cavendish looking for his 11th individual stage win at the Giro for his career. 5K banner, and they're just about up to the back of the 2 leaders.
My goodness, look at the pace of this peloton. Little bit of wind out of the riders' right, so it's putting the back end of the field over on the left side of the road. But this big, wide part of the front, these are all guys that still have their lead-outs. They still have designs on trying to do something.
Something else to watch for is those guys who don't have the lead-outs looking for Mark Cavendish's wheel, trying to get in position to play off the fastest sprinter in the bunch.
Cavendish right there on the left with the red jersey. Christoph on his wheel. Ferrari off to his right. Actually, Ferrari is behind Christoph.
We guess Cannondale staying up there towards the front, trying to protect Basso. Their sprinter Fabio Sabatini pretty much on his own if he wants to give it a go.
He has not had a lot of resources at his disposal for these sprints because they've been riding so much for Basso.
Delage and Bach not giving up, but they know that the end is near.
These two have been storming off the front. There's no doubt. They never had much daylight. They held on for a while, but honestly, making it on a day like today would take a miracle.
Now the topography just did not give them an opportunity.
Hey, see the Sky Man at the front, I didn't catch which one it was, kind of waving his hand saying, get out of the way, because he didn't want him to just sit up and come back like a couple of stones into the lead out.
We got work to do, boys. Out the way. 3.5K left to go. Cavendish on the left-hand side of the road is 5th wheel. Again, he's got Eisel and Geraint Thomas in front of him. Alexander Kristoff behind him, then Roberto Ferrari behind him. Sasha Modolo is moving up for Colnago. Robbie Hunter is there in the multicolored jersey near the left-hand side of the road for Garmin Barracuda. Benga Pharma Quick Step with 2 riders at the very front riding for Francesco Chicchi.
Everybody knows where they need to be. They need to be right behind Cav because he's the guy that still has men left for the lead out. They've shown their intentions.
Comes Saxo Bank up the right-hand side of the road in the 2 shades of blue. They've lost JJ Hayedo, but Sebastian Hayedo, another sprinter, is still in the race.
Indeed, when you got 2 brothers that are both good sprinters, you may as well try and line it up for the one still in the game, and they are right now.
They rode for a short time earlier in the stage before giving way to Team Sky. Now they're back at the front with 2.5 kilometers left to go on straight and flat roads to the finish.
And so far, we have never seen the Saxo Bank lead out really play an important role in the race. They've always fizzled late in the game. Maybe they're timing it better today. Still seems...
Mile into the final 300 meters. And there goes an Orica Green Edge rider up the left-hand side. Cavendish on the left-hand side near the barriers now launches his sprint. Guardini coming up the middle in the yellow. Ferrari on Cav's wheel. Andrea Guardini for Farnese Vini is going to get the sprint win.
Unreal. Guardini had been shut out all race. That was a massive victory head-to-head against Cavendish.
Wow. Cavendish had the position.
Wow. Guardini. Big ride by him.
Where have you been this entire Giro?
Apparently, he was feeling the love today. He had been talking about how disappointed he was up until this day.
On the final day for the sprinters, the Italian comes through in a huge way. The finish today. Now, Mark Cavendish in perfect position in the final kilometer to try and take his 4th win.
Now look where he is. 3rd wheel. He's got 2 teammates in front of him still, Eisel and Thomas. Cavendish is the white jersey. That's Ferrari. And on the right side, Guardini. So they're in the yellow, and they're just kind of bumping around at this point. Now it's Thomas all on the front for Cav. Cav's still in the right spot here. But watch Guardini in the 4th spot. Robbie Hunter is sitting right behind him, the Garmin Barracuda man. Everybody here just waiting for the timing. Guardini jumping now, starting to go. Cavendish up the left, so he hasn't even sensed Guardini. But look at the speed of the Italian. Unreal. You never see anybody ride by Mark Cavendish like that. and he easily has the speed to get it done. Cavendish, oh, he is fuming. He got smoked.
He was really upset, but what's the beef?
The beef is that he's not as fast as that guy, and probably, hey, your team didn't do any work, and now I'm upset about the fact that you smoked me at the line. But hey, that's the way it goes sometimes.
.200 kilometers long, but the most categorized climbs on any one stage will be held today. A Cat 3, 3 Cat 1s, and a Cat 2. Check out this profile, and most of that climbing action is packed near the back.
This is a very decisive day. 17,000 feet of climbing over 123 miles, and many think this will be the most decisive day of the entire 3 weeks of racing.
I'm Steve Schlanger, joined by Todd Gogolski. This is a breakaway of 16 riders that has 8.5 minutes. It's our largest breakaway at this year's race. It was 17 riders until just a short while ago when Andrea Guardini, yesterday's stage winner from Farnese, dropped back and is now losing time. The pink line has the riders just about midway up the first of the 3 Cat 1s, the Passo Mangin, and it is a long climb, the longest of the day by far at 20.5 kilometers.
And though today's climbs are not maybe as well known as the Stelvio, probably the most well-known cycling climb in all of Europe, which they will see tomorrow, today may be a more decisive day. Even though the climbs are shorter, they're steeper at the end, they come in rapid fire, and we know that Purito is going to need to make some time.
Again, back into the corner of Italy and heading north to Treviso.
Well, they do a little bit of flat riding. They did a little bit of flat riding earlier in the day. They've already gone over the first Category 3 climb. They're on the Category 1, the Mangin. But the big climb that is so selective is the Pompeaggio. They do it twice. The first time they go past the finish line, climb 3 kilometers higher, then they go out for a circuit and they finish 7.7K up at the second time. And that's where I think it will be very much blown to pieces.
And here is the main field on the climb of the Mangin. Again, 8.5 minutes behind a very large 16-man breakaway. And our top GC riders that we just highlighted, led by Joaquim Rodriguez, as well as Hejdahl, Basso, and Scarponi, are near the front. Katusha doing the bulk of the work at the front of the field, but we expect that Liquigas Cannondale will at some point come to the front because that has been their MO throughout the race, and Ivan Basso is going to need his teammates like never before today to grind away and wear down his other GC rivals because Basso needs to start taking time today.
And Steve, there's a very disparate agenda for all the guys at the top. Hejdahl, he just needs to mark guys. Basso and Scarponi, they need to get time on Hejdahl and Rodriguez. And Rodriguez, all he needs to do is get time on Hejdahl. So that means that Rodriguez can go late on the last climb, and if he picks up 30 seconds or a minute on Hejdahl, he's in much better shape. But Basso has to go earlier. He has to go harder for a longer time because he needs to get back time up to Hejdahl and a minute and a half almost to Rodriguez.
So the stage is set for a day in the high country of northern Italy. Stage 19 underway with just over 80K and a lot of climbing still to go. Slow slog for the main field going up the Passo Mangin climb. That's a quicker way to ride. Settle up, boys. It is going to be a long one today at the Giro. They say now we'll sit this one out. Not even they want to go uphill as much as the riders have to today.
I was seeing a little Movistar mechanical here, and actually earlier, right around this, not too long ago on this climb, we saw Christian Vandevelde actually dropping, it looked like his chain, sucking it up and having to stop. Navardowskis waiting for him. Let's see who we have here from Movistar.
Now that was Sergio Pardilla, Spaniard, and his teammate Jose Herrera Lopez was there waiting for him.
That's Herrera there, 143, getting pushed off, and he's the man who is been more impressive so far in this year's Giro. And the men, as they get further up this climb, notice how small this road is. This is not a big ski road like some of them that you get the big tour buses up. This is a small climb, and it's a small, tricky descent as well.
Stefano Perazzi, number 55 from Colnago, part of the large breakaway, and he was the first man over the first climb of the day. We have 16 riders from 16 different teams in the breakaway. That is hard to do.
Imagine the odds there. I mean, part of that is luck, but part of that is obviously that every team wants to be represented. So unfortunately, there were 5 teams that were not in it, but now that Guardini has been dropped, now there are 6.
And the only teams not in the move now, Farnese, Liquigas, Garmin Barracuda, AG2R, Vacan Soleil, and Orica. 82 kilometers left to go, an 8:16 lead for that breakaway. The highest placed rider in the GC among the breakaway group is Sandy Cassar of FDJ. He's almost 12.5 minutes behind Joaquim Rodriguez on the GC, currently sitting in 19th place. So obviously, a lot of guys well down on the GC. That's why they've been given so much time. That's why it's such a big group. And why Katusha is just setting a moderate tempo right now at the front end of the peloton.
And on a day like this, all the guys know coming in, it's going to be a really hard day to control. Hard for Liquigas Cannondale, hard for Katusha, hard for Garmin Barracuda. So that's why a lot of guys gunning for the breakaway, because they think they may have a chance to stay away all the way. Taylor Phinney here, hurting off the back a little bit. He's got a couple more big mountain days to survive to get to that time trial that he will so much like compared to this.
Looking to bookend his second Grand Tour with individual time trial wins.
Well, they start the fans out young in Italy.
I don't know if the baby's enjoying it as much as Dad is.
Well,
he's like, it's not the most comfortable position.
Isn't that always the way it is, though?
Where's my bouncy seat?
I mean, you know, when you see the little 2-year-old kids dressed up in their fancy clothes, the kids don't care. It's all for the parents.
Of course. So, still a long way to go to the summit of this climb. It doesn't top out until 74.7K from the finish. It started over 95K from the finish. As you see, Ivan Basso behind his teammates in the sunglasses there. Damiano Cunego behind him for Lampre. And actually, the steepest part of the climb is coming up shortly, where it hits 15%. That's with just over 80 kilometers left to go on the stage.
The last 6 kilometers of this climb average 10%. So not only is this climb long at over 20 kilometers in length, but the top is pretty steep. Buscatel picking up a stage win a couple of days ago, and that app has had an incredible race as well.
So Liquigas rider.
Notice how small the road is. One guy with a mechanical problem clogs up everything. Just imagine the chaos if a couple of... Oh, this is Schmid.
Now this is a second issue for him in the last couple of big mountain days.
You know, that's really hurtful to Basso's chances when Schmid has trouble. And a couple of days ago, I never actually heard if he had a mechanical or more of a biomechanical when he went out the back before he was able to do his big turn on the front for Basso on the climb.
We've still got a long way to go and still a great deal of climbing, but now we're working his way back up.
Well, and now poor Taylor Phinney's sitting on his wheel. Taylor, you don't want to ride that wheel too long because that will blow you sky high. Taylor's got to ride within himself.
Most of the Liquigas Cannondale riders here on the right-hand side of the road in the green. Near the front of the field, blue jersey on the left-hand side of Matteo Rabottini of Farnese Vini, leader of the King of the Mountains competition. And kind of surprising he didn't sneak into this breakaway earlier today.
Sella's thinking about challenging him quite a bit for these mountain points.
The official summit comes at 74.7 kilometers left to go, and you see the 75 in the upper left-hand corner of the screen. That's from the GPS. Sometimes it's slightly off, so I don't exactly know where they are, but they're very close to the summit. And Sella leading the way with Rohregger behind, and then Perazzi But the amount of daylight between them and the field has now come down to well under 7 minutes. It was almost 8.5 earlier.
Going to be nice and cool on the descent. Sella picking up the jacket. Perazzi taking full advantage of the fact that he's at the top of the hill. Not so much attacking Sella per se. He's just going for those mountain points.
Rohringer, the only one to respond.
Oh, this is a very hard effort by these two guys. And oh, Rohringer not happy about the motorcycle, but I think he's really more unhappy that he couldn't match the other man on the sprint there.
I think that was the frustration, that he wasn't going to be able to beat Perazzi, so he just took out his frustration on the closest available motorcycle.
He couldn't do that to Perazzi because Perazzi was up the road.
Right.
You know, it's perfectly understandable. You put so much on the line on these days. Look at how tiny this descent is at the top. It'll open up eventually, but the top is very much like this for a while.
So, Stefano Perazzi of Colnago has gone over the first two climbs as the first man in the field. Now he is on the descent, leading the way with under 75 kilometers remaining. Front of the main field now, still on the climb of the Passo Mungin, just inside of 1K from the summit. Ivan Basso's Liquigas Cannondale team now has come more to the front. Basso's second wheel. Behind him, Michele Scarpone in the pink and blue of Lampre. Ryder Hejdahl is there. And this is to the front now. That 16-man breakaway that went over the summit a few moments ago, led by Stefano Perazzi. They're now on the descent. This is the very front of the race. Perazzi in the blue, followed by Thomas Rohringer of Radio Shack Nissan. First two riders on the road, and just inside of 6 minutes ahead of the peloton.
And a gripping descent here for these guys. Tiny little road off of the mountain. And you can see with two men just how carefully they have to navigate some of the switchbacks. And behind them, the whole peloton still climbing will be in that descent in a matter of about 5 minutes.
And it will be stretched out, no doubt. Scarpone, number one. Ahead of him, number 121, Basso. Garmin Barracuda rider, number 95 up there on the right-hand side of the road is Ryder Hejdahl. Pink jersey is there, Joaquim Rodriguez. So the top four are near the front of the field, with half a kilometer to go to the summit of the Mungin climb. He tried a small attack back in the second week. But for a lot of the race, those riders have more or less been marking each other. And that's what they're doing here. There's still a lot of climbing to go. 70 kilometers left to ride.
And if you looked at the strength of some of these teams, let's say you were Michele Scarpone sitting in 4th overall, and you saw all these Liquigas guys on the front. If Scarpone attacks right now, he will effectively kill his chances in the Giro d'Italia. He will burn himself out. Basso's team will let him fry out there for a while and then bring him back, and they'll get rid of him on the later climbs.
It's not about not attacking, it's about being selective in when you do.
Exactly, and that is definitely something that we, as you were saying, we haven't even seen much of that. Today, we're going to see some of that. There's no doubt. The severity of the climb to the finish, guys have to put it on the line.
So the field over the top. Just about 6 minutes behind the leaders. 2 climbs down, 3 to go. How's that for narrow and twisting?
It's just spectacular. Absolutely spectacular. Perazzi and Rohringer are still bombing the descent down into the forest at this point.
Now later on, that Pompeaggio climb that they'll do twice is much more exposed. This very heavily forested and tree-lined, very scenic, but Pompeaggio exposed, and a guy who had some success there in the past, former Giro winner Gilberto Simoni, says it's so wide open you feel like a polar explorer when you get near the top.
Good times. I guess that's especially the case on a bad weather day, but today things are doing all right for the guys today. Apparently there was a little bit of rain out on course earlier in the day somewhere, but maybe they have gotten lucky today overall.
Could be some precipitation tomorrow on the Stelvio, possibly even snow. But today, partly sunny and temperatures pretty mild. 60s at the top of the climbs and 80s down below. Our 2 leaders, Perazzi, followed by Rohrager, 6 minutes ahead of the field. 68.5 kilometers left to go on the stage. Now, our next climb will start with just inside of 50K remaining. That'll be the first time up the Pompeaggio.
Perazzi last year, 3rd overall in the Coppi e Bartali, an important shorter stage race in Italy. He picked up 2nd along the way in stage number 3. And there's your pink jersey. Overall race leader, Joaquim Rodriguez. Looks like he's got a white vest on over the jersey.
And Joaquim Rodriguez said that he doesn't know this final climb today, the Pompeaggio. He's never done it in a race, but Ryder Hejdahl has raced on it before. So does that sort of familiarity with a climb make a difference at this point in a race, do you think?
It makes a little bit of a difference. Every time you do a big climb for the first time, it seems harder than the next times you do it. So Rodriguez, he's at a little bit of a disadvantage there, but since they get to do it twice, he did joke about it earlier, saying, well, I don't know the climb, but by the second time, I should have a good idea what I'm up against.
Conversely, Rodriguez knows tomorrow's climbs over the Mortirola and the Stelvio, and Hejdahl does not. So that advantage gets reversed.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to go out and recon all of these stages. And so the guys, sometimes they go on past memory, sometimes they have time in their racing schedule to get out and actually recon the key stages. But if you think about it, earlier this year, it would have been very hard to go over these climbs. This one's 6,500 feet because it's covered in snow.
And tomorrow the Stelvio is over 9,000 feet. Spectacular descent off the Passo Mungin. Everybody going downhill now and under 70K left to ride on the stage. Robbie Hunter of Garmin Barracuda has crashed on the descent.
Oh, I hate seeing a pole like that next to him as well. I hope he's not the source of that pole being knocked over.
So, not back up on his bike, just standing on the side of the road as the breakaway continues on, almost 6 minutes ahead of the main field.
Well, certainly the pass has opened up a little bit now further down, but the field, the peloton still up high on the climb where the road was very narrow. And obviously, when you have that many guys bombing down a mountain with a road that small, it's possible to make a mistake.
Everybody single file and flying along. Robbie Hunter now back on the bike and continuing on the descent.
Well, that's really rough. It took him quite a while to get up off the ground, but it looks as though he's shaking it off.
Now, this was just a moment ago. Garmin Barracuda already lost their top sprinter in Tyler Farah, who crashed out earlier in the race. Robbie Hunter, one of his primary lead-out men. Look at his right arm is bloodied, so is the left.
Kind of do a little bit of damage control when you hit the ground, and now he's taking it pretty easy on this descent. You just, before you start moving a lot, you think about, okay, what hurts? And the first thing you often think about is the collarbone. All right, that's okay. What else hurts? You saw him standing up there moving his right leg around, moving his foot. And you just kind of assess if you think something might be broken or not.
It's one of the crazy things about the sport. Unlike others, there are no timeouts. You can't go to the sideline and have the trainer check you out, maybe go to the locker room and get an x-ray or two and then come back to the game. In cycling, you have to take stock right away and determine rather quickly if you can go on or not, because the race doesn't stop. And if you're going to go on, you have to do it in short order so that you don't lose too much time.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, the question is, how far back was he behind the peloton, actually? And did all the riders behind him end up passing him. He doesn't want to be the last guy on the road. He needs to be with that group that forms to basically make the time cut, the gruppetto, or whatever you want to call it. The laughing group is what I used to call it a lot of the time, although it's often not very funny back there.
So 4 hours in, and still 3 climbs left to go. 2 Category 1s and a Cat 2. 39 climbs altogether at this year's Giro d'Italia. 20 of those are Cat 1 or Cat 2. And we have 4 of those types of climbs on today's stage alone.
Just look at the way these guys fly around these corners. It's not that hard to do on a road this size for these professional athletes because they can use the whole road. But when it's the one lane like we've seen higher up, even for the best riders in the world, it's pretty tricky.
Adriano Malori is number 5 for Lampre, one of 5 different riders to wear the pink jersey at this year's Giro. And 5 leaders. We've had 6 different lead changes and could still see some more in the final 3 days. Remember, going back to 2010, when Ivan Basso won his second Giro, he didn't take the pink jersey until stage 19. That was the first time in that race he pulled on the Maglia Rosa. And so far, he's not worn it in this year's race, and here we are now today on stage number 19.
And if you look back to 2005, on the Stelvio, Basso lost over 40 minutes. He came back the next year and won the Giro. But that's the thing about these climbs. Like, we talk about who we think is best suited for these days, but if you have a bad day, it doesn't matter how well suited you are for the stage, your chances are long gone.
That's the frustrating thing for a rider, too, because you try and guard against a bad day, but sometimes you just don't know when it's coming, and there's not much you can do. I mean, you recover, you eat, you drink, you do all the things you're supposed to do, but sometimes it's just the body that doesn't respond.
And that's part of the reason why the cyclists guard their time so much after the stages. That's why if you're in the pink jersey and you have all those media obligations an hour to 2 hours after every day, it actually takes something out of you cumulatively. It's less rest, it's later for your massage, all the thing, getting the calories into your system, although the team will help them get some food into their system right away, but it all adds up. And so sleep, recovery, massage, everything you can do to be good this far into the race is huge. And if you blow it one day, your whole race could be ended.
All right, so Basso has 4 teammates with him at the front of the field. Basso himself is followed by Scarpone, number 1, and the pink jersey of Joaquim Rodriguez sitting right behind Michele Scarpone, although Rodriguez has the vest on over the pink jersey at the moment, and a couple of wheels behind him, Ryder Hejdahl at the bottom of the screen for Garmin Barracuda. He's number 95.
An interesting thing that I had not experienced before, I've never heard of it at least, is the Liquigas Cannondale team of Ivan Basso. They have a refrigerator truck driving the race with their team full of food. So it's not that they have to go out locally every town and buy the food that their chef cooks for the team. He actually brings a truckload of food on the race and restocks it as he goes.
Kind of like a hot dog stand. Just roll it up and
yeah, here you go.
What you want.
Yvonne, here you go. Would you like sauerkraut with that, or do you want it just with some spicy mustard today?
So rolling into Molina de Fiemme. And another issue for a Katusha rider on the side of the road.
And that wheel change coming from the neutral support motorcycle.
Looks like Alexander Kushinsky, the Belarusian.
Kushinsky, a big motor on that squad, and he was actually picked for the team by Valerio Piva. There's Robbie Hunter. No, that's Navardauskas, excuse me. Both of them off the back. But Kushinsky was picked by Piva for the team time trial, and boy, it worked. They lost only by 5 seconds to Garmin Barracuda, and that set Joaquim Rodriguez up for where he is now.
That's the exact reason why he's in the race lead, because they had that surprising ride in the TTT. Looking down on the front of the main field, led by Liquigas Cannondale. 2 climbs down, And still 3 to go. A pair of Cat 1s and a Category 2. And on the little bump that's leading to that second Category 1. Our 16-man breakaway with some undulation now ahead of them on the road. Castello di Fiemme from the 12th century. Everything built up on a hill. The fortresses, the castles, with the tremendous views. At the time, it was more of a defensive posture that they had to take. But now just gorgeous scenery.
Basso getting rid of the jacket there, saying thanks very much. If you can take that back to the car, Eros Kopecky, I'd appreciate it. And you know, those castles remind me of your palace a little bit, Steve.
Oh, one of them. I mean, just the summer home. Now it's been the winter there, it's too cold.
Well, of course, it's hard to heat those places.
So this is the 16-man breakaway. And again, 16 riders from 16 different teams in the signature move today. And the largest breakaway we've seen at this year's race.
Of course, there are some cobbles, not only here, but some more coming up in a couple of spots later in the race as well. Cobbles shouldn't be any big deal on today's course, however. It's really just the fact that it's a long day with a ton of climbing and some very steep hills as well.
Liquid Gas Cannondale back here at the front of the field, followed by Lamprey. Now the familiar position for the team of Ivan Basso. No doubt the strongest team for the mountains at this year's race, but will it pay off in the end? You see that World Championship symbol there, and that's because this area of Val di Fiemme, Italy, will be hosting the Nordic Skiing World Championships next year in 2013. Today, it's much longer for the guys on the bikes, but everybody gasping for air in Val di Fiemme going uphill. Will Basso be doing the same, or will he be putting the hurt down on the others?
They'll certainly all be hurting. It's just a question of who has that edge at the end of the day.
Now the pace, very pedestrian here at the front of the field. Sandy Cassar coming through to the front for FDJ. Again, the highest placed GC man in the bunch at 12.5 minutes down and 19th overall.
And by the way, we did see Rohriger and Perazzi off the front on the descent, but they have been reabsorbed by the rest of that group, so they're all back together off the front there. Lucas Hayedo coming through there, number 209. Juan Manuel Garate for Rabobank.
Quite a mix of riders in this breakaway. You got some good climbers, got a couple of sprinters, typical breakaway riders. So a wide mix.
And a lot of people probably wonder, how does a guy like Lucas Hayedo, the sprinter, survive in a breakaway like on a day like today? 128 here. Oh,
again,
you gotta be kidding
Sylvester
me.
Schmid.
Oh my goodness.
The third time in the last 2 climbing stages, he's had some kind of an issue that's forced him to drop back.
It's not Schmid's day. It's not his last couple of days in the mountains. Unreal.
Daniel Origi, number 8 there for Lamprey.
Let's get back to the breakaway. Just the thought of a sprinter like Hayedo being in the break. One way you can hang in a break is the break tends to go a little bit slower up the climbs than the peloton, and it goes faster and smoother everywhere else. And so it's actually better for a sprinter in a breakaway in terms of their ability to hang in there. Not just one banana, but a 2-pack.
Fruit, drinks.
He's getting loaded up here.
Should just say, you know what, give me the fruit basket. I'll take the whole thing up.
You know, and I'll tell you, it's actually a pretty complicated deal when you hand up a banana. Because when you get the bottle like we just saw there, that's easy. You can push off the bottle and get a little forward momentum. But when you push off the banana like that, you're left with a mess.
Just don't let that banana drop out the back pocket and underneath your back wheel. Whoops. Now going through Cavallese on their way to the first time up the final climb, the Pompeaggio. And the next climb starts at 48.4K left to go in the stage. And again, they are doing that climb twice. coming up next, and then at the finish of the stage itself. In between, just for fun, we're throwing in a Cat 2, the Passo Lavazze.
Just for fun. Yeah, that's how everybody thinks about it, that's for sure. Especially Adam Hansen, the way he modified the profile. That was brilliant.
Adam Hansen, the only Lotto Belisol rider in the breakaway today.
Roman Kreuziger, tough day for him 2 days ago in stage number 17.
Well, he'd had some very consistent results coming into the Giro. He was looking good after posting several top 10s in some pretty big races, so Astana had high hopes for him. Riding on the GC, thought he could certainly get onto the podium, and he was hanging in there for the first 2.5 weeks, but as we always talk about, he had that one bad day on stage 17.
Yeah, and I actually agreed with his team. I thought he was best prepared that we've ever seen him, and he's had really good results coming in. His coach, Neil Henderson, I spoke with him. He felt that Kreuziger was ready for potentially a podium overall, but you know, you can look at the numbers that the coaches look at and the types of wattages a rider can sustain and so on, and you can do everything right, but if you just get dehydrated, you get behind on your eating, sometimes it's hard to even catch up after several days after you make a mistake like that.
Softening up the legs for the climbing to come at the end of the stage. Liquigas. We come back to the leaders who are on the finishing circuit, but they're riding it for the first of 2 times, and that's the intermediate sprint point that they will come up on later. So they're about 2.5 kilometers away from the start of the Passo Pompiaggio climb. And again, they're doing that climb twice, so that's why they're on this circuit. They do the final climb twice. They'll hit the finish line 2 different times. The first time will be with just over 40K left in the stage.
Well, nobody's wasting any time to get to the bottom of that climb, that's for sure. Both the breakaway and the field strung out in single file. Valerio Agnoli on the front there for Ivan Basso. Well, he's actually not on the front. Looks like they're saving him for a little bit later. He typically gets used on the climbs, but he's not the last guy for the climbs for them.
Now Basso has a lot of guys now at the front at his disposal. 4 in front of him, 2 teammates behind him, as they set a pretty good tempo here leading into the 3rd climb of the day. That climb starts with 48.4K remaining on the stage, so they are coming up on it shortly now. Our leaders are just about to the base of it. This field a little ways back. So here's back to the 16-man breakaway group. They should be starting the climb shortly. This will be the 3rd of 5 categorized climbs today. And they start to go uphill. Now the Passo Pompiaggio, and again, this is the first of 2 times up this climb. Stefano Perazzi, a little issue with the back. Now he'll have to try and catch back on. Chain problem.
Notice how the guys will look for the smoothest part of the roadway, even though none of it is actually asphalt. The stones in the middle there are a little bigger than the cobbles on both sides.
Now watch Perazzi again. Oop.
Yeah, slipped the gear. Just a good thing he didn't suck it up there in between the front inner chainring and the frame, because that often will cause the rider to have to get off and pull it out, which is exactly what Christian Vandevelde had to do right before we came on the air.
The field 4 minutes back, and still on the open road, headed towards that climb that our leaders have already started. And look at this, single file at the front with Liquigas Cannondale, followed by Garmin Barracuda and Lampre. Teams of the top GC riders. Our leaders, again, on those narrow cobbled streets on the early portion of this Pompiaggio climb. That's Liquigas Cannondale really setting a very high tempo at the front of the field, trying to wear down the other teams, trying to discourage any kind of attacks, trying to make sure that they're in firm control for Ivan Basso. Meantime, up the road, what was a 16-man breakaway has now come apart as they work their way up the Pompeaggio climb. And that 5K banner is to where the finish line will be for the end of the stage. They'll cross the finish line at once before the actual end of the stage with this circuit finale.
Sandy Cassar leading that trio, but these are the men that have been dumped out the back. Ignatiev for Katusha, Hayedo for Saxo Bank, and Rohriger was the man who put in a couple of attacks and forced that separation in the breakaway.
This is just what Basso wants, his teammates burying themselves. The work you do on the lower slopes of the climbs, sometimes just as important as the work that you do anywhere else. On the upper reaches of the climbs, on the flatter sections, to set the heavy tempo early on, to grab control, burn guys off, and really discourage anybody from going forward. That's the key for Basso. And this is the separation that's formed at the head of the race with the breakaway. Sandy Cassar, Thomas Rohriger, and Stefano Perazzi are the first three riders up the road.
Great day to be a spectator in the race, because if you make your way up to this climb, you get to see them twice here and then the final selection at the end. So really nicely done by the organization to put in a big circuit like this.
You don't often see a big climb in the high alpine stages being done twice on the same day.
No, it's actually quite rare.
Here comes the field. And they're really working on the gap now, down to just over 3 minutes, but that's to the very front. They're going to start picking up guys in just a little while, considering how quickly some are dropping out of that front group. The pink jersey of Joaquim Rodriguez. How long will his teammates last to support him? When might he attack today? These climbs really more in his wheelhouse, his comfort zone. Steep near the top. He needs to put some time into Ryder Hejdahl at some point before the time trial. Now our three leaders. Sandy Cassar almost rode himself into the pink jersey earlier in this year's Giro when he was in a breakaway. Now another breakaway today, the highest placed GC rider at 12.5 minutes down. So nowhere near as close as he once was, as he's lost a lot of time in the last 5 days.
And bye-bye Valerio Agnoli. Kapow! As he did a huge turn on the front. And we'll see if he's able to get enough recovery to actually get into this field and not get ejected.
44K left to go for our leaders. Other riders from the breakaway dropping back down the road. See how far back they are from our front group of three riders. And there's Perazzi with Cassar, and looks like Rohriger is now falling off the pace.
He's definitely getting into trouble. Launched a couple of attacks earlier. Cassar, who's still up the road with Perazzi, it's hard to imagine that was a week ago that he almost rode into the Maglia Rosa. Stage number 12, when Lars Bach timed his attack perfectly, got away and won the stage. Cassar got the second place on the day and moved into third overall, just 26 seconds behind Rodriguez, where Cassar had been in the virtual Maglia Rosa for quite a while that day. I just saw Spider-Man. Taylor Finn would be happy to see that.
Liquigas Cannondale still in control at the front. Well, for Ivan Basso, will it be enough? Will he be able to slowly burn off the other riders around him on the GC? If he was in the pink jersey and leading the race, this would be an extremely smart tactic. This would be the thing to do. Now, given the fact that he needs time, they still have to approach it this way, but they may need more than this. They may need to do something even bigger and bolder for him to recover the time he's lost.
It really is very interesting because you look at what's happening. Everybody knows Liquigas Cannondale is going to ride on the front. They're going to make it as hard as possible for as long as possible and hope that the only diesel left is Basso. So they all know the game, and it's really just a question of whether or not you can follow him or you can beat him. And quite honestly, it all comes down to how good riders are. And at a certain point, that's all that really is going to settle a race like this.
The pink jersey is there, a couple of wheels back. Joaquim Rodriguez.
There's Kreuziger. We've already seen Tirolongo go out the back. Just saw real briefly there Christian Vandeveld for Garmin Barracuda. About 15 riders back from the front.
It looks like Hejdahl has two teammates in Stetna and Vandeveld. Basso has two teammates as well. Scarponi has Cunego. There's Schmid, number 128. He's right next to Kreuziger, number 31 for Astana. The two guys you expect to climb pretty well are now off the back.
Well, Kreuziger did lose about 10 minutes 2 days ago on stage 17. His chances went straight out the back. Schmid, he's not here riding for himself. He's here riding for Basso, but he's struggling. And the two mechanical problems today certainly didn't help him.
Our two leaders through one of the tunnels on this climb. Cassar leading Perazzi. Climb packed on what has become a beautiful Friday at the Giro d'Italia, first of the final 3 days and first of back-to-back huge mountain days with mammoth summit finishes.
Another great job by Eros Kopecky on the front for Basso. Nice and steady as she goes on this big climb. They're still quite a ways from the top.
42K left in the stage.
The red jersey at the bottom, Moreno. Way down there for Katusha. Not a good sign at all. As Moreno, one of the men who's supposed to be there for Rodriguez, and he's been suffering a little bit the last couple of mountain days.
Vandeveld was also dropping back, number 99 for Garmin Barracuda, so no longer up there alongside Hejdahl. Now, these two leaders working their way towards the finish line of the stage. You see the red kite means 1 kilometer to go, and they'll hit the finish line and then still have over 40K left to race. So they see the finish line twice today. And what's really disconcerting for the riders is once they see that finish line the first time, they're still going up. They're still climbing. How often do you see? Again, I mentioned earlier how Gilberto Simoni, who is also won on this climb, talked about how barren it is up here. As you come near the top, you feel like a polar explorer, and we saw them riding through the dense forest earlier. Things do get very exposed on this old country narrow road near the top of the climb.
Definitely a lot of exposure up here because they're above tree line a little bit. Tomorrow, stage 20, tons of exposure on the Stelvio that summits at 9,000 feet.
See, there's some wind up there too. You see some of those flags blowing, so they're dealing with wind.
It's really common to have some wind when you're up above the trees that high. And look at this, Valerio Agnoli, the man who did a huge pole earlier, back at the front when he looked like maybe he was going to go out the back of the field.
Just over 100 meters from the top of the climb now for Perazzi and Cassar.
Don't expect Cassar to challenge him here. Cassar's thinking bigger turn. He's thinking he wants a stage win.
So Stefano Perazzi, 3 for 3. The first man over the first 3 climbs of stage 19 with 2 climbs now left to go. First of two trips up the Pompeaggio climb. Our first two have gone over, and now the remnants of the breakaway still coming up, but close to the summit. Next will be Radio Shack Nissan's Thomas Rohriger.
So Perazzi now picked up a total of 35 mountains points, so he goes from 0 to 35 points in that classification, and that moves him straight up into second place. 1 point ahead of Michael Golas, the man who held it for several days before Matteo Rabatini picked it up along the way to his stage 15 victory.
So that's the top of the climb underneath that banner. They won't come up this high the next time around. Again, we already saw them go through the finish line. That's where the stage will end the next time up the Pompeaggio. So they don't climb this much the second time through. This first approaching the summit.
I feel for Agnoli there. He is really doing a job for his team leader, Basso.
3 climbs now in the bank. 2 more still to go. Here are the 2 leaders who now have 35 kilometers left to go on an epic mountain stage, the first of the final 3 days of the Giro d'Italia. Here are our 2 leaders on the descent of the Pompeaggio. In the white, Sandy Cassar. In the blue, Stefano Perazzi. 3:21 ahead of a reduced main field of GC riders that includes the pink jersey. 32 kilometers left to go on the stage and 2 climbs. The Cat 2 Passo Lavazze is up next, and then the Category 1 Pompeaggio for the second time will be coming up right at the end of the stage.
It's under 20 miles to go for these 2 men off the front with 3-minute 25-second advantage. A nice little move there by Perazzi. Rather than coming around and being in the wind and having both guys in the wind at the same time, just push the rider in front of you a little bit as you roll up to their back wheel. You have that momentum because you're in the slipstream.
Now Stefano Perazzi, teammate of Domenico Pozzovivo, who won a stage earlier in this race, and Pozzovivo actually won the final stage of the Giro del Trentino back in 2010 on that finishing Pompeaggio climb. So he could be a factor in the finale as well.
He's been looking very good. Looked great 2 days ago on the Jow. He's one of the guys that forced the pace very late in the race and actually saw Scarponi get ejected as he was cramping up. Scarponi did make it back on the descent, but just barely. And he had a massively good ride in stage 8 that he won.
Stage today, not all that different from stage 17. The climb's just a little longer and steeper than the ones they faced, including the Jow.
And the big difference here from stage 17 is that it's a summit finish instead of a downhill and some kilometers after the downhill to the finish. There's no time to get back on if you get your ticket punched on the final climb today.
Well, this is the start of the next climb. Just like that, they're going back uphill, off the descent, onto the Passo Lavazze.
Oh, lovely. And Cassar tossing the bottle, Liquigas Cannondale leading. And one thing, keep your eyes peeled and look for guys to reach back into the pocket and just try and get some food into their mouth and into their system. Even if you can just get it in the mouth and you don't have time to chew it up and swallow it.
What do you do with it then?
Well, you could do it slowly. Sometimes it might take a few kilometers to actually get it down. This must be Guardini.
Now yesterday's stage winner just finally now crossing that line, but still a long way to go. 40K for him.
Oh, I hope he doesn't miss the time cut.
All right, so the field still on their way to the start of that next climb. Our 2 leaders are already on it. Liquigas Cannondale at the front, setting the tempo, and it's been a brisk one. They're 3.5 minutes behind Perazzi and Cassar.
At this stage of the bike race, 30K to go. Probably most of the guys will not go for solid food because it is so hard to chew up and get down. You end up choking on it, getting it down your windpipe. We'll probably all be doing gels at this point.
Well, here we are with Cassar pacing Perazzi on this climb that's just over 6K long, averaging over 8.5%. And that maximum of 13% will come with just about 27 kilometers remaining in the stage, and that's also 2.5K into the climb itself. The steepest part of the climb is near the start. It averages about 11% for the first 2.5K of the climb.
Thomas Roediger still soldiering on there. Wow, he's right behind him.
He's not too far back. This climb will summit with 23.4K remaining in the stage. It's the fourth of 5 climbs on the day.
The challenge for Roediger is 35 seconds. Is still 35 seconds. Sella coming up behind him. This is Sella. And Roediger doesn't really look like he has much of a shot at closing it down on his own, but maybe if Sella makes it up to him, maybe that will provide the impetus he needs.
Our leaders already going up the Cat 2. This small field of GC riders will be there shortly. They've done the Cat 3, 2 Cat 1s. Now on to the penultimate climb of stage 19.
This baby tops out at 13% maximum. And they should be actually getting fairly close to that 13% maximum right now at the head of the bike race.
Under 30K left to go on the first of back-to-back high mountain stages at the Giro. Consecutive summit finishes before the final stage, the individual time trial in Milan on Sunday. And the 30K banner for this field. Liquigas Cannondale now has been at the front for quite a while. As Roediger looks back to see how close that Sella may be. I think Sella is closer to Roediger now than he is to Cassar and Perazzi as they're spread out on the road, and hard to tell if they're all going to come together or not at this point. They're all riding so slowly on this climb.
Very tough. This first few 2.5 kilometers of this climb, averaging just at 11%. So these guys are... Sylvester Schmid, that was a big piece of the puzzle missing for Liquigas today. And he had a couple mechanicals, and who knows what else was going on with him. And he's a guy that they typically depend on very late in these days.
Coming up to the summit of the Passo Lavazze at 23.4K left to go. They are inside of a kilometer away. Climb a little bit easier near the top. That is, of course, relatively speaking at this point in a long, hard stage.
So I don't expect Sandy Cassar to challenge for the maximum points over the top of this. And if he does, I think he's doing it just to sting Perazzi. Because Perazzi clearly wants the mountain points, and Cassar has not been concerned for them.
Over 30 miles of climbing on today's stage alone. And tomorrow is regarded as the Queen stage, the toughest stage of the race, where they go up to its highest point.
It's a very interesting 2 stages because some people will tell you that tomorrow's harder. Alan Piper, director for Ryder Hesjedal, he tomorrow is harder. But you talk with other guys like Katusha's Valerio Piva, the director there for Rodriguez, and he said today is harder. So a lot of it, when you think about it, the harder day is just the type of rider and what type of terrain is harder for them.
And you think about one of the things that can make tomorrow harder is the fact that what is happening today is impacting tomorrow's ride.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Perazzi moving through there, Cassar getting on the wheel. This should be academic. Although Perazzi kind of accelerating very hard here.
Just making sure. That's 4 in a row for Perazzi as he crests the summit.
I think Perazzi just wants it to look good for the spectators.
Stefano Perazzi first over the top, and now 4 climbs in the rearview mirror for our leaders on stage 19.
He's got a little ways to go to get up into first, and even if he wins the stage, he will not get enough points today. I actually don't think they're going to stay away to contest the finish line.
We still have a few minutes and just 1 climb left to go, so you think they're going to be brought back?
I think they probably are. I mean, they've been riding very well, there's no doubt. But I think the general classification battle today is so important that the field is going to hit the climb really hot, and it's going to stay hot for quite a while. And then we're going to see some attacks, and that will just bring these guys back just by the nature of the GC battle.
Remember back on stage 15, another huge climbing day when Matteo Rabatini was out front by himself over 4 big climbs. And it looked like he was at one point going to easily win the stage, and then they started attacking. And Joaquim Rodriguez attacked from the GC, and he caught him right there in the final few hundred meters.
It was unreal that Rabatini hung on for that win. I mean, honestly, I just was so deflated for him when I saw him get caught. Rodriguez has won so many Grand Tour stages and so many other big races, and it was a huge possibility for Rabatini, and I thought he would get ejected, and he just held on and then outsprinted him.
There is Rodriguez in the pink jersey saying that he's going to try and attack today, tomorrow, to put more time into Hejdahl, who sits behind him, 30 seconds down on the GC, because all the time that's either going to be won or lost today and tomorrow is all in relation to what is going to happen on the individual time trial on Sunday. So the guys in contention, our 4 top men on GC, are all thinking and doing the math. What do we need to gain in these next 2 mountain stages because of what we might lose in the time trial? Or for a guy like Hejdahl, what he's going to gain as the fastest guy in the time trial, what does he have to do just to preserve time these next 2 days? So the calculus becomes different for the different riders.
And the calculus gets pretty hard when you're cross-eyed and you're on the final climb and you're trying to make things happen. That's a Garmin Barracuda rider off his bike. I was not able to tell which that was. Getting a front wheel. Peter Stetina, okay, one of the 3 from the first group. Pete's had a couple of mechanicals, and he's also had a couple of days that just were not quite what he was hoping for in the mountains, but he's still been a very solid helper for Ryder Hejdahl.
Well, remember that mechanical he had back earlier in the race cost him the white jersey as the best young rider.
Yeah, he had to chase back on right before a climb, and look at him now, chasing back on a descent right before a climb.
The final climb starts with 7.7 kilometers left to go on the stage. So still a ways away, 16K for our leaders, who are Cassar and Perazzi. These are the chasers. Dario Cataldo at the back, his teammate Serge Powell's in front of him. The second chasing group also has Roman Kreuziger of Astana, who's leading the way. So this is actually the 3rd group on the road. They're the second chasing group, but the 3rd group all together out on the road right now, descending off the Passo Lavazze climb.
And let's remember that Serge Powell's was in that original giant breakaway group, but Cataldo and Kreuziger attacked out of the field and made it up to him. And it's getting a little helping hand there. Ivan Basso, a natural, right in the middle of the front of the group. Usually you move over to the side when you do that.
And I think maybe Hejdahl the same.
A lot of guys. Rodriguez, it's a long day in the saddle. You got to get a lot of fluids in your system. And the fluids have to have the right blend of electrolytes. You can't just pound a bunch of liquid, especially just water without electrolytes, because your body wants to keep the balance of electrolytes right, and so it will force you to expel that water.
Perazzi and also Cassar, our 2 leaders. 15K to go. Trying to hang on to their lead with 1 climb still remaining. Well, the climbs, the descents, they all add up to a demanding day.
And this Vacansoleil rider having some serious mechanical problems. And it looks like he got the chain back on. So maybe the cobblestones popped the chain off.
So the front of the field hitting the 15K banner. Our 2 leaders are at a dozen K left to go. That's Perazzi, followed by Cassar.
3K advantage for them, but that's where the race is moving fast. When they hit the final climb, that 3K will be much shorter.
Do you still think with over 3 minutes and under 12K to go, these guys will be caught? That's your estimation.
Well, I didn't say it with over 3 minutes and under 12K to go. So let's just put it that way. Are you asking me if I still feel that way?
If you still feel the way you did a few moments ago, that's what I'm asking.
I say it is getting more difficult for the field to catch these guys. But I am still not willing to say that one of the two in the front will for sure win.
These are the chasers, Kreuziger, Powells, and Cataldo. Kreuziger leading the way at the front now for Astana. Now, there are no time bonuses at the finish for these high alpine stages, so that's not a concern for the GC riders. It's just about physical time that they're able to accrue in the final 12 kilometers of today's stage. And again, that final climb starting with 7.7 to go. They'll be doing it for the second time on today's stage 19. Back to the front of the race. Cassar now in front of Perazzi. And look at this. Rohriger and Sella have made it up to him. So it's a group of 4 at the very front.
Well, we haven't seen those two for quite a while. And Rohriger just plowing right on through.
Tell you what, there was a time earlier in the stage when Rohriger looked like he was done.
Yeah.
Like he had been dropped and was going to be going backwards instead of forward, but he's found a second gear and now he's back with the front group.
Well, Rohriger got himself well into debt by doing 2 or 3 attacks to establish that little split in the breakaway. But then he had trouble recovering from that effort. And that's the thing that professional cyclists are so good at doing. They're good at being right on the limit, attacking, surging, going over the limit, and then somehow sort of settling in and maintaining after that.
Roman Kreuziger, 2 days after losing a chunk of time and dropping out of the GC battle, helping to lead the chase, now in pursuit of these 4 riders. These are the chasers in pursuit of our 4 leaders who are already on the final climb of the day. And Thomas Rohriger getting dropped from that front group. Under 7K to go from the finish. At the front, Emanuel Sella, followed by Sandy Cassar, and then Stefano Perazzi as Rohriger claws his way back up to the tail end of the group. Just starting the Pompiaggio for the second time today.
They're not wasting any time. Sella hitting out hard right at the bottom, putting Rohriger into big trouble, but Rohriger making it back to the wheel of Perazzi there.
This climb, 7.7K long, averaging over 9.5%. Its steepest slope will be 16% and right near the end. They have 1.5 kilometers left to go. But remember that the last 4 kilometers of the climb in total averages almost 12%. And this is the 5th climb of the day. So that could really frame the general classification battle that is unfolding back here at the front of a reduced field. 3 Garmin-Barracuda riders, Hejdahl, Van de Velde, and Stetina, right near the front, trying to protect Hejdahl's second-place position on the GC.
Hejdahl sitting pretty right now, and it looks like Ivan Basso has all but used up all of his helpers on this very difficult day in the mountains.
Those are the leaders, and Perazzi attacking.
So now we're getting a 2:30 gap from the pink jersey group up here to Perazzi. I'd say it's still hanging in the balance if one of these guys can stay away for the win.
Sandy Cassar responding, right behind him. Stefano Perazzi has been the first man over each of the 4 climbs so far today.
And it's no real surprise to see Rohriger and Sella getting ejected because they were in trouble on the previous climb as well. And typically, you don't get better as the race goes on. Sometimes you do, but it's rare.
Stefano Perazzi has never won a stage at the Giro, neither has Cassar, although Sandy Cassar has won at the Tour de France before. And here comes Cassar now, making his move around Perazzi.
Whoa, big ring in the climb, it looks like. Well, maybe I'm wrong, but still a massive gear as he hits out of the saddle there. Perazzi getting on the wheel. These guys need to be thinking about steady, though. If they attack each other like this all the way up, they're going to blow themselves sky high and get caught by the GC men.
Now that's Dario Cataldo sitting right behind Roman Kreuziger in the chase. This is back at the front of the field. Stetina now leading the way with Van de Velde second and Ryder Hesjedal third. Garmin Barracuda at the very front of the group.
Zanioli pulling off for the front right there on the replay after he has done a huge amount of work, and look at him. He should just get off the bike and just stand there for a few minutes.
Almost standing still.
He probably will get off the bike.
Under half a dozen K left to go for our leaders. This is at the back end of the field. It's now being led by the three riders from Garmin Barracuda. Liquigas Cannondale is second on the road.
Can you believe this? Garmin Barracuda on the front. Peter Stetina, Christian Van de Velde, Ryder Hesjedal. Hesjedal in second overall. Everybody says he's in the best place to win this race overall. I agree, and it's taken so long for the Italians and the newspapers and everybody to say, hey, Ryder's a real danger.
That's Tom Jelly-Slijter, number 167, the Dutch rider for Rabobank now moving to the front. A very good climber for the Dutch team.
He's very good on the punchy stuff in particular. He pushed early on some of the short climbing stages to the finish.
And you got to believe Joaquim Rodriguez is going to attack if he can, depending on how the legs feel, but he wants to take some time today. Scarpone also needs to attack. Basso, his teammates are just about gone. What can he possibly do at this point?
And Kreuziger here riding for redemption after getting his ticket punched 2 days ago on stage number 17 and losing 10 minutes.
Stefano Perazzi back near the front, and he's right next to Sandy Cassar. These two have just attacked one another. A couple of 1-2 punches a few moments ago, but they're back together with 5.5K left.
I think it's a little smarter for them to work together and start attacking each other inside the final couple of kilometers if they still have a gap.
For Radio Shack Nissan and Sella in the white, number 23 for Androni, have been picked up by Cataldo and Kreuziger, who are now at the front of this group, and Sella having trouble just staying in contact.
Sella, maybe his eyes were a little bit bigger than the strength of his legs as he went into the bottom of the climb, really pushing the pace.
These are the two men at the front, Perazzi and Cassar. $5K banner for the pink jersey group.
It's a phenomenal day here for Ryder Hesjedal. He's been able to ride defensively. All he has to do is keep it close to where it is with Rodriguez and Basso, and he is just that much closer to winning this race overall.
Well, this is pretty much the scene we watched 2 days ago on stage 17 with all of the top GC contenders riding in the same pack up the final climbs, but today it's a summit finish instead of a descent. So you gotta believe at some point soon somebody is going to attack.
They have to attack. The thing is, when they see Pete Stetina on the front taking that long turn as Roeger now getting dropped out of that chasing group, they realize that if they attack, that Pete Stetina will bring them back, not the other general classification men, and so that hurts them. So that's how you end up with this poker game and this little bit of a stalemate.
And also, all right, so Perazzi is in the distance, but Kreuziger is pulling him back. There's Ivan Basso. 122 down on the general classification. And Perazzi, who was the first over the first 4 summits of today's stage 19, trying to make it an even 5 for 5 and a clean sweep, may not make it now because Kreuziger is coming in a hurry. This is the GC battle back with Joaquim Rodriguez. Still just playing defense right now, not attacking. Sitting behind Ryder Hesjedal, Michele Scarpone, and Ivan Basso. The big 4, and really the 4-man race for the Giro.
Oh, look at Caruso just flogging himself back there. And up the road, Perazzi is being brought back by Kreuziger. Kreuziger without a win this year, without a win last year, but he is looking like he may pick up a stage here in the Giro today.
Caruso pulls off, Basso left by himself at the front, followed by Ryder Hesjedal and Scarpone and Joaquim Rodriguez. The top 4 on the GC are the front 4 at the head of this group.
We're going to see some action. We're going to have to see it pretty quickly here. Now Pozzovivo on the right side of the screen, moving up. Now right next to the pink jersey of Joaquin Rodriguez.
Sergio now and Rigoberto Urán, the two-team Skyriders there. So Pozzovivo for Colnago, moving up behind the pink jersey. Now alongside, might he launch an attack here? Oh, there goes Scarponi, he's the first.
Okay, let the games begin. The gloves are off. Hejdahl, look how comfortable he is, right on the wheel.
Michele Scarponi, 136, behind Rodriguez on the GC. Now Roman Kreuziger is the first man on the road. He's past Perazzi. Cassar is just behind him, and Roman Kreuziger trying to distance the Frenchman.
This is an inspired ride by Kreuziger. He's never had a Grand Tour stage win. He's been 2 years without a win, and he had a really tough day 2 days ago on the Jow.
So Scarponi's attack was neutralized. Hejdahl, Basso, and the pink jersey are still there.
He now is there in the black jersey for Sky. Behind him, Urán, Best Young in the white. Those are the front six at this time.
3K to go for Kreuziger as Cassar rejoins him at the front of the race.
And no matter what, wow, it's still 3K to go and it's down to a minute. I can't believe how much it's come down in the last K and a half.
Remember, the steepest part of the climb is 1.5 kilometers from the finish, where it hit 16%. But the last 4K average almost 12% altogether. Basso in the green at the front on his left. Hejdahl for Garmin Barracuda in the pink and blue at Scarponi. The pink jersey, couple of wheels back of Joaquin Rodriguez. These are our first two. Kreuziger, number 31, trying to accelerate once again away from Sandy Cassar, and Scarponi again puts in a surge.
Look at Hejdahl. The guy is unbelievable.
They can't drop him.
They have never seen Hejdahl like this, and right now they've got to be thoroughly demoralized by the Canadian.
It's a race for a stage win for Kreuziger, and the GC battle behind him on the road. Scarponi at the front, Hejdahl's second wheel.
Then Basso, Rodriguez, Urán, Pozzovivo.
Urán is the rider in the white jersey there, best young rider. Pozzovivo, number 51 in the blue at the bottom of the screen.
Mikel Nieve for Euskaltel in the orange, trying to make contact again, but Kreuziger looks like he has popped Cassar at this point.
Roman Kreuziger was ripped by his own team management a couple of days ago as Scarponi launches his third move, his third attack, and once again Hejdahl is responding right on his back wheel. Joaquin Rodriguez also able to match the acceleration. Basso, though, maybe getting gapped off.
Indeed, Basso is struggling a little bit. And now Urán on his wheel as they make it back up, and now they come by Rohriger, who had been up the road.
Scarponi keeps looking back, staring down rider Hejdahl, looking for some sign of weakness, some sign that he's making the big Canadian crack. This is Kreuziger at the front. Now Scarponi really going for it here. He's launched 3 different moves, but he's not been able to drop his 3 top challengers. Basso now makes it back up into the group.
It's very important on a climb this steep, when you're this late in a hard day and this many days into a stage race, not to overextend yourself on an attack and blow up. So that's what Basso did there. He stayed within himself and he dieseled back up to those guys.
Hejdahl now looking back, putting in a little acceleration himself as Scarponi comes right alongside, but they have dropped Joaquin Rodriguez and Basso.
Rider Hejdahl is looking so good right now. I actually was wondering if he would even try any attacks, because you still have to remember that tomorrow is a big day in the mountains, and you want to go into that day with everything you can in the tank.
How discouraging must this be for Basso and Rodriguez? And also for Scarpone, who's launched the most moves of these top GC riders. He's attacked multiple times here, but they can't get rid of Hejdahl. They're still behind this man, Roman Kreuziger, at the front and in the hunt for his first ever Grand Tour stage victory.
And though the GC may be out of the picture for him, a stage win here today would be great.
So Scarpone and Hejdahl putting more time into the pink jersey and also Ivan Basso. And now Hejdahl and Scarpone are coming up on the back of Stefano Perazzi of Colnago.
Very close brush with the devil there as well, as they're probably going to go right on by Perazzi.
But Scarpone needs time. 136 behind Rodriguez on the GC. 106 behind rider Hejdahl, who is right alongside of him with under 2K now to go. There's the pink jersey behind Pozzovivo. Basso losing contact with Rodriguez.
Basso has done everything he can do in this race so far. He said he thought Kreuziger was the best suited to win the overall, but he would keep trying, but he could not be disappointed with the fact that Hejdahl's been stronger.
Scarpone and Hejdahl top of the screen. Pink jersey Joaquim Rodriguez at the bottom. Basso a little bit further back down the road. There's Basso just in front of Rigoberto Urán. All right, Scarpone and Hejdahl coming up to the steepest part of the climb where it hits 16% with 1.5 kilometers to go.
I cannot even fathom what is going on in Canada right now, as Ryder has been known as the guy with the weight of a nation on him for a couple of years. It's really come to fruition this year. The team has actually made shirts, Ryder weight of the nation Hejdahl, that they've been selling. No Canadian has ever finished on the final podium of a Grand fourth overall in the 88 Tour de France. That's the best ever.
Kreuziger. This is what a Grand Tour comes down to. The pink jersey still a little ways behind, right behind Domenico Pozzovivo and then Ivan Basso here. So some gaps on the road. It looks like at this point Rodriguez is still within 30 seconds to hold on to the pink jersey, but it's not a certainty that he'll hang on to it, depending on what happens in the next 1.2K. Looks good. This might be his defining day.
It looked like he maybe was just going to start to distance Scarpone a little bit there. 1K to go for Kreuziger.
Roman Kreuziger so consistent this season. Top 6 finishes in Tirreno Adriatico, Tour de Romandie, and the Giro del Trentino. But disappointing on stage 17 just 2 days ago when he lost about a dozen minutes and dropped out of the GC race.
Look at this, Hejdahl putting a little bit more coal on the fire, and Scarpone is coming off.
He's not able to answer this.
It's still a long final kilometer, but Hejdahl really impressive.
So Ryder Hejdahl, the one man who didn't need to attack of the top 4 guys on GC, is the guy who's putting time into the others.
Never Everybody else is going to be demoralized by the Canadian strongman today. The way he has conquered this stage, it is an absolute flogging he has delivered to the competition.
And the pink jersey is in play the way Hejdahl is riding here inside of the final kilometer after well over 6 hours on the bike.
He looks like he's about 150 meters behind Kreuziger on the road. Is Hejdahl thinking about the stage? Could it be?
There's Scarponi behind him, then the pink jersey a little ways back. Ryder Hejdahl back up on the pedals, maybe riding into the pink jersey today, trailing Rodriguez by 30 seconds on the GC.
Look at Ryder Hejdahl. A massive day for him, a massive day for his team, his country. This team has never gone for the general classification like this, and this is the first time they have, and look how well it's turning out.
Well, whether or not Hejdahl takes the pink jersey today or not, this is a serious blow to the other three contenders.
No doubt about it, because Hejdahl already was in the driver's seat, being the best time trialist of all three of the other contenders at the top of the standings.
Basso, that familiar grimace. The Giro slipping away from the two-time winner. Kreuziger, just 2 days removed from team management, questioning whether or not he could be a team leader.
Well, he's come back swinging, there's no doubt about that.
Ivan Basso, who has put his team on the front more than any other squad at this year's Giro, with the hopes that a day like today would be decisive for him, but it's gone the other way for the Italian.
It's certainly been a decisive day, but it is not the day that Basso wanted. It's not the day that Rodriguez wanted.
And a long final kilometer it is for Roman Kreuziger.
Almost 6 hours and 20 minutes into it. And let's get the relationship. Does Hejdahl have a shot at the stage? I think not at this point.
But what about that pink jersey? Has Rodriguez limited the damage? A 30-second margin coming into the stage. Roman Kreuziger, redemption on stage 19 as he gets the win.
He throws his arms up and then promptly almost crashes. What a ride. But Ryder Hejdahl, I think he has a very good shot at riding into pink here. Let's watch the clock.
A defining day in the career of the 31-year-old Canadian. Ryder Hejdahl, second place, and now what will the gap be to the pink jersey?
So unofficially, oh, look at this. Rodriguez has come back solid. It was 19 seconds unofficially. Rodriguez is going to preserve it.
He loses a few seconds. So does Scarponi. And now Basso is going to lose big time here. Pozzovivo next across for Colnago. And now here comes Ivan Basso, followed by Rigoberto Urán.
Oh, look at this. Urán maybe was thinking about trying to sprint around him. Not going to happen.
Well, Kreuziger will get the stage win, but no doubt the biggest winner is Ryder Hejdahl today.
Urán, look at him, just cracked as he crosses the line. Gadre there, following the Euskaltel leader, and that is Mikel Nieve.
6 hours, 18 minutes for our winner, Roman Kreuziger. But then Ryder Hejdahl behind him, attacking the other three GC contenders and getting a gap to Rodriguez, Scarponi, and Basso.
Thomas Depent there for Vacan Soleil, Cunego, and that is Sergio Henao. So let's think about the general classification a little bit. Katusha's still in it. They have to defend another day. Hejdahl even closer. Now Hejdahl really poised to win this thing overall.
But that was a huge body blow that Ryder Hejdahl delivered to the other GC riders here at the end of stage 19. Tell ya, Ryder Hejdahl almost having his deficit today to Joaquim Rodriguez, now just 17 seconds back. Scarponi loses 3 seconds to the pink jersey on the day, and Ivan Basso losing even more time than that. We are live on stage 20 of the Giro d'Italia, the queen stage of this year's race. And we have a 14-man breakaway that has a lead of just under 3 minutes on the main field with just under 70 kilometers left to go. And that means they are about to start one of the legendary, iconic climbs in all of cycling, the Mortirolo. Steve Schlanger alongside Todd Gogolski, certainly glad to have you with us on what might be the most spectacular day of cycling so far at this year's first Grand Tour.
A wicked day for the guys as they have 136 miles, massive climbs, 3 climbs in the rearview mirror. 2 of the most feared climbs in all of cycling lay just ahead.
The pink jersey of Joaquim Rodriguez, leader by only 17 seconds over rider Hejdahl. He is right alongside Hejdahl near the front of the field. Basso is there with his Liquigas teammates as well. Basso a big loser on time yesterday. And they are 2:45 behind the leaders, who are within about a half kilometer from starting the Mortirolo. And then at the end of today's stage, it's another icon, the Stelvio, and the highest summit finish in Grand Tour cycling history. So that is what is in store. A special Saturday at the Giro. And we are now underway with stage number 20. Mountains are nature's most daunting features. Majestic geographic forces that symbolize the unforgiving journey that lies ahead. To win a Grand Tour, it requires a virtuoso performance on one of these stages. And today at the Giro d'Italia, another historical production is poised to unfold on 2 of cycling's most iconic climbs. Towering behemoths that have defined Giro champions for almost a century. The fabric of a Giro winner is woven on their merciless slopes. While most riders end up broken by the soul-sapping 1-2 punch of gravity and geometry, others are inspired by the power of possibility. Joaquim Rodriguez is still in the leader's pink jersey, but 3 men will challenge him on the final day of climbing. Ivan Basso, Michele Scarponi, and rider Hejdahl. These are the main characters who welcome the chance to enter cycling mythology, who see the impossibly vertical path to the finish not as a steep road, but a stairway to immortality, where Giro legends live forever. Finish in Grand Tour history, still covered in snow and promising a spectacular day at the Giro d'Italia. The Stelvio. On top of today's finishing climb is where the riders will decide this Giro d'Italia. Steve Schlanger, Todd Gogolski, and the general classification tighter than it was a day ago at this time. Joaquim Rodriguez's lead over rider Hejdahl now trimmed to just 17 seconds, with both Michele Scarponi and Ivan Basso losing time on stage 19. They have some work to do today.
Putting in the ride of a lifetime to tighten the grip at the top, but today 136 miles for the guys. 3 climbs already in the rearview mirror, but 2 of the most feared climbs in all of cycling lie ahead. The Mortirolo, 22% maximum grade, 1-foot climb up to 9,000-foot summit of the Passo dello Stelvio to finish it off.
And we are live with our 14-man breakaway, almost 2.5 minutes ahead of the top GC riders in the field. Just under 67 kilometers left to go in the stage, and they are on the lower slopes of the Mortirolo climb now. A Category 3 at 11.5 kilometers long.
This Mortirolo climb is absolutely ridiculous. You come out of the valley, turn onto this little road, and immediately it is tiny like this and just feels like it goes straight up.
Averaging 10.5%. Its maximum slope is 22%, and they'll hit that with 58 kilometers left to go on the stage, which puts it about 10K into the climb near the top.
And the thing about this climb is it's pretty much in the tree cover like this the whole way, so it's not super spectacular to look at because the guys are just hidden in there, unlike some of the climbs, and especially the Stelvio, which is wide open and you can see them for miles to come.
38 turns on this climb. They do have a 1 kilometer descent that starts at 59.5K left to go in the stage. And then the last 2K of the climb averages almost 14%. As we are up to the leaders, and it's an interesting combination of riders, as our top 4 riders on the GC all have teammates in the move today.
Well, those guys are up in the move, and they may prove very helpful to their team leaders on the Stelvio later in the race, because they can sit up if their team leader is coming up and try and pace them on the climb a bit. Christian Vande Velde there on the left out of the saddle is Ryder's teammate. Vande Velde has been very helpful to Ryder the last couple of weeks in keeping him in good position, and one of the final men on the mountains along with Peter Stetina.
This is back in the field that is starting the climb now, just a short ways behind our leaders, and there's our King of the Mountains leader in the blue jersey, Matteo Rabatini, who seems to now be struggling.
Rabatini was going for all of the early mountain points, and he got a bunch of them earlier today over those first 3 categorized climbs, but now he's in trouble.
And that's Oliver Zog of the Radio Shack Nissan team, starting to slowly pull away at the front of the race now. Part of that big breakaway, but now a solo move here on the lower slopes of the Mortirolo.
And if you notice how far down he is on the general classification, 1 hour, 58 minutes, 30 seconds. That's how big the time gaps are at this point.
Well, Radio Shack Nissan trying to make some moves in the mountains the last couple of days. They did it with Thomas Rohriger yesterday and now Zog today. That's because they really missed out on everything else at this year's Giro, with sprinter Daniele Bonatti pulling out earlier, and also their team leader Frank Schleck abandoning the race.
And even before the thing got started, Jakob Fuglsang, who was supposed to be their team leader, with some knee problems, so that's why they called in Schleck just 6 days before the start of the Giro. They said it's time to get off vacation and get ready for the Giro.
So the breakaway well within reason. Our top GC riders back at the front of this field with teammates up the road, so they're all well positioned. They all have a very comfortable dynamic here at the moment. And as far as that GC race, Ryder Hesjedal took firm control yesterday with that late surge at the end of stage number 19 on a day when he could be the most defensive of all of the GC riders. He was the most aggressive instead, and he almost halved his deficit to the race leader Rodriguez while putting time into both Basso and Scarponi.
It was a
Teo Carraro was at the front of the race a moment ago, but now he has been dropped on the Mortirolo.
It's a really brutal climb. Shows no mercy to anybody, and if you overextend yourself at any point on this climb, it doesn't let up. So it's very hard to get recovered.
We now have 4 riders at the front. Oliver Zog for Radio Shack, Damiano Caruso of Liquigas Cannondale, Christian Vande Velde of Garmin Barracuda, and Jose Serpa of Androni. And here's Joaquim Rodriguez at the front of the peloton, making an early move.
Ryder Hesjedal right there. He knows that this is the type of climb Rodriguez is very good at, these very sharp climbs, and Hesjedal knows he has to shut this down quickly and make Rodriguez think that he has no chance of doing anything.
So Hesjedal is right on Perito's wheel. Next man on the road is Michele Scarponi, just a couple of seconds back. But these two have a little separation here. No Ivan Basso. Scarponi working his way back up towards Hesjedal.
Yeah, Basso is the guy that's going to hate this climb the most, actually.
All right, so Scarponi is there. So it's Rodriguez, Hesjedal, and Scarponi here together after the little acceleration by Joaquim Rodriguez. Now, Rodriguez was saying yesterday how he was just 15 years old back in 1994 when he watched Marco Pantani drop Miguel Indurain on this Mortirolo climb. Indurain had won the Giro the 2 previous years in 1992 and 93. Pantani was the new kid in town, the new Italian climbing sensation, and he's trying to take inspiration from that today.
Sergio A now, Rigoberto Urán trying to get across as well, and Basso still trying to close down the gap.
So Urán comes up with a now. Hesjedal, Scarponi, they're all there. But it's Basso still trying to regain contact. 62K left. They are 4 kilometers away from the steepest part where it hits 22% as Hejdahl moves to the front. And Rodriguez again.
All right, well, Perito is definitely showing his hand right now. His intention is very clear. He is not waiting for the Stelvio. He is going to try and put everything to these guys a little bit earlier and see how much he can hurt them.
Well, on the last 2 big summit finishes, they've all waited until the very end. And nothing happened that worked out in the favor of anybody except Ryder Hejdahl. So why not try earlier?
Well, Sergio now is the 4th man in the group. The Colombian, who has spent a little bit of time in the Best Young Riders jersey and been swapping back and forth with his teammate Rigoberto Urán. Look at that, Ivan Basso has made it up now.
So Hejdahl leading the way, followed by the pink jersey of Rodriguez, then Scarponi, Now, Basso, and Urán in that order.
And one thing about a climb like this is things tend to settle down a little bit. These main contenders, they're the contenders because they've been the best on the climbs, which means when you hit these climbs where there's selections, they're typically all still together.
Rodriguez knows these climbs. The Mortirolo, the Stelvio, he's raced on them before. Ryder Hejdahl, however, has not. And Hejdahl did not preview these climbs, but he did say that once you're this deep into a Grand Tour, you're this tired, all these climbs look the same anyway.
I have to say, Hejdahl's looking very confident right now. Not only is he marking the moves of Rodriguez, but then he goes to the front and rides tempo. To me, Hejdahl is really riding into something incredibly special in his career. Obviously, this is huge because he's the man poised to win this race overall, but he's also showing a different type of style on the bike at this point.
These are the 4 riders at the front of the race, 4.5 hours in. Damiano Caruso of Liquigas, Christian Vande Velde of Garmin Barracuda, Oliver Zog of Radio Shack, and Jose Serpa of Androni. Their lead, 3:23, with just over 60K remaining. More descent here, so little bumps along the way, and then it'll go back uphill to its steepest point. Last 2 kilometers will average just about 14%. So the field still coming up on that short descent. Lasts for about a K. Chasers Amador, Vande Velde, Caruso, and Serpa.
And they get a little bit of reprieve here. Just take a breath, get another drink or 2, and then prepare for really part of the steepest road that any cyclist will ever get on. There are very few climbs in the world that are steeper than 22%.
See how the road kind of goes down and up and undulates a little bit through the forest here for Oliver Zog, but what you really notice is just how narrow it is. These are roads that were really just meant to be paths through the mountain, not to handle a big caravan of bikes and cars and people. Just mountain passes.
Yeah, it's basically a 1-lane road, and in fact, when it's open typically to the people that live on it, every time there's a car coming the other way, somebody has to pull off the road. The other person has to sort of halfway pull off the road to get around them. And that's what all the local residents are used to on this climb.
All right, this is back at the front of the GC group. Again, a Mega Pharma Quick-Step continuing to lead the way, but Ryder Hejdahl ever present at the front for Garmin Barracuda. Behind him, Scarponi, Basso, pink jersey a few wheels back. Domenico Pozzovivo is there for Colnago, one of the few teams that missed the break today. That did not get a man in the 14-man move.
They did a bunch of work earlier on as well. So did Garmin Barracuda, but look at this asphalt. Oh, that is nasty.
All right, it's going to start to go up just about here to the maximum of 22%, coming at 58K to go.
It's real nice of everybody to have repaved a lot of the climb, but they just didn't repave the steepest part of the climb.
Why make it easier? Just adds to the lore, the richness of the racing. That's Pete Stetina, number 98.
Struggling just a little bit. He did tell me last night that he was really tired, but he said if you'll recover a lot overnight, and by the next day you still feel decent enough, and he's highly motivated right now, he says.
And for a while, Hejdahl wasn't getting a lot of attention from the Italian media, the fans, some of the other riders, and as Hejdahl was getting stronger in this last week, Stetina was saying that they were enjoying sitting around the Garmin Barracuda dinner table and really sticking it to the Italians.
Yeah, he is funny like that. He thinks of it as sort of America and North America versus Italy.
Why not? You got to create some animosity. You need those rivalries.
Well, you know, he's having some fun with it. And quite honestly, if you're not having fun at the dinner table, you're in trouble. Because the racing is very hard, and you have to find some levity. Oh, Tirolongo.
The crash from Tirolongo.
That's on the probably on the descent.
And that's Matteo Bono of the Lampre team, who's just pulling away from him. We saw Tirolongo a moment ago out the back.
Boy.
And when you crash there, it's so narrow. Everybody else is waiting to get through. And
yeah, this is going to cause complete chaos. So it was on the descent. That's Hejdahl that got sideways, and then, oh, Tirolongo, Superman, hitting the right side of his face on the asphalt, taking out Bono.
Wow.
Ouch.
Face first, sliding across the asphalt. All right, this is back out front to Zog.
Oh, that was pretty nasty looking. You know, that is not what the guys are expecting on this climb. They don't, the little descent is over before you know it. You never expect to crash on that.
Steepest part of the climb for Zog. Now back at the front of that GC group, Rabobank had two riders in the breakaway earlier, Steph Clement and also Daniele Slagter.
Yep. And now the field, or what's left of the front of the field, is hitting that nasty asphalt coming off of the little descent. Feel less pain, feel more motivation.
The summit in sight. Look how narrow this is.
Remember, he won the final monument of the year last year, the Giro di Lombardia, and now here he is on one of the most iconic climbs in the sport, first man over the top.
Now who's going to be next? Now the two Vacan Soleil riders have teamed up. Looks like perhaps Matteo Carrara.
And I think it's De Hent actually that's with him. So De Hent actually has come from the pink jersey group. And just behind, I thought I saw the figure of rider Hejdahl through the crowd. Carrara gives De Hent a nice push.
That's all I got.
And see you later.
Now, in what other sport can you get so up close and personal with the star athletes?
Unfortunately, sometimes too up close and personal. That's Basso and Gadre. And moving forward.
It's like there's a gap.
Yeah, definitely things have gapped up a little bit there amongst the contenders. So De Hent, second man over the top. There's Hejdahl.
And the pink jersey right behind him, so is Scarponi. But Basso, I think, is a little ways back.
And that is Pozzovivo out of the saddle there.
Domenico Pozzovivo, already a stage winner at this year's Giro.
Those are the main contenders today, but I agree with you. I think Basso was a little bit gapped off. It's a little bit hard to tell here with all these trees.
Now other riders who are in the breakaway coming up over the top. Looks like Lasada of Katusha. Remember, it was a 14-man breakaway earlier, just before they started this climb, and a lot of that has just exploded on the steep slopes of the Mortirolo. So guys scattered on the mountain. Oliver Zog just went over, first man to crest the Mortirolo, 3 minutes ahead of this pink jersey group that's getting smaller by the kilometer.
Basso just making it back up there. So he has been put through quite a bit.
All right, so Pozzovivo, Hejdahl, Scarpone, Rodriguez, Iran, now, and there's Basso just behind him in the green jersey for Liquigas Cannondale.
It's also a very tricky descent, so there's no time to rest. Cunego now chasing hard, trying to make contact.
All right, this is now back to our leader.
Now hold your breath here on this descent, guys. This is tricky.
Technical and twisting. Narrow roads for Oliver Zog. First man over the Mortirolo. 3:25 lead now. And just about 54 kilometers left to go. And one more mammoth climb still on the day. And waiting on the Stelvio for the arrival of the riders is our good friend Tim Maloney from Road Bike Action Magazine. And Tim, first up, what are conditions like on the Stelvio? Obviously, we've seen the snow from earlier, and we're also hearing it's quite cold.
It is quite cold. It's about 40 degrees. There's some light wind, and there's a lot of snow. The riders are, luckily, though, not going to have any kind of precipitation. There's some mixed clouds, but that was what everyone was afraid of this morning in the start in Caldas, because the alpine conditions are extremely changeable. So it looks like they'll make it up without having any bad weather conditions.
Tim, how are the Italians embracing the what looks like the very strong likelihood that a Canadian is going to win this Grand Tour and not an Italian?
Todd, I have to say that the Italians are really embracing Ryder Hejdahl. They look at him as a great rider. He's clearly the strongest in the race. Earlier on, some of the commentators were saying that they thought he was certainly going to get popped in the really tough climbs. And instead, yesterday, he turned the tables and attacked. So he's really impressed a lot of people in the media, not just Italians, but pretty much all the European cycling media. And the real talk around the press room is that now, if Ryder does win this Giro d'Italia, he's going to be a potential favorite for the Tour de France.
Incredible. And, you know, I think everybody thought that Ryder, his biggest weakness was in the steep climbs, like the climb yesterday that they finished on, like the climb they just went over today, the Mortirolo, and yet he's been right there on the steep climbs.
Well, I've known Ryder since he was a teenage mountain biker, and he's always been good on the steep climbs. It's just, you know, the situation is that the playing field is extremely level right now, and Ryder Hejdahl is showing how strong of a rider he is. And, you know, frankly, I think that, you know, he's really mentally determined to show his quality as a rider. I talked to him this morning, and he's very laid back. And he lives in Maui on the off season, and, you know, was not really worried about it, in the sense that he felt very, very confident all race long about his ability to win this race, and he's showing it.
Let's talk about his laid-back attitude a little bit. I've seen a lot of guys who get stressed out and they lose races simply because of their stress level. They get sick, they make mistakes. Ryder is unbelievably chilled. What do you think about that?
Well, yes, it's funny you should say that, Todd, because yesterday when we were coming down from Alpe de Pampiago in the huge traffic jam, we went past the Garmin bus, and he was there doing his warm down on the rollers and smiling and chatting, and you know, I just said hello to him and stuff. He gave me a big wave and hi, and he was just chill. I mean, it is pretty amazing having seen the stress that can hit a Grand Tour contender in the final week, especially who has a lot riding on it. I think that Ryder's take is that even if somehow he doesn't win, he still had a fantastic race. And I think also Perito Rodriguez feels the same way. So I think that, Perito came into this Giro hoping to win a couple of stages and maybe do well, and he's had the jersey for a long time. So I think actually both of those riders have been very relaxed about things. But the Tour de France will be a completely different mix when you get to the tension level.
All right, Tim Maloney, we appreciate the time and enjoy the Stelvio coming up shortly. So that's Tim Maloney, Road Bike Action Magazine. We are down under 50 kilometers left to go in the stage. The pink jersey, by the way, now has a black jacket on. That's Joaquim Rodriguez, who is covered up for the descent off the Mortirolo. And the final climb of the Giro d'Italia, the 39th of 39 climbs in this year's race, will start with 22.4K to go, and that is the aforementioned Stelvio.
Yeah, but who's counting, right?
All right, well, the two BMC riders teaming up here, Matthias Frank and looks like Johan Schulp.
Yep, Schulp is there as well. And they've got the AG2R rider, Hubert Dupont. Dupont was great in this race last year. Really a good climber, throwing down a lot of attacks late in the race, as well as his teammate Gaudret, but they just haven't quite had that same fitness this year, but they're going for it right now. There they are, attacking that pink jersey group.
Now BMC struck the first note in this Giro with Taylor Phinney winning the individual time trial on stage 1, grabbed the first pink jersey, and hoping to win the other individual time trial tomorrow on stage 21. After a tumultuous first week of crashes and mechanicals before eventually losing the Maglia Rosa.
Funk and Schulp have been joined there by a couple of riders. Zog continuing to soldier on. When he won the Giro di Lombardia last year, he soloed in the last 10 kilometers for his first ever professional win. This is a storming ride for him. He's been away since about a little more than halfway up the Mortirolo, but he still has such a long way to go. That's what makes it such an outside shot for him.
That's what we've seen on these most difficult stages, is that's Dario Cataldo of Omega Pharma Quick-Step there. What we've seen from a lot of riders, just picking their spots to try and have a big day. Matteo Rabottini, Miguel Rubiano, Andre Amador. Today it's Oliver Zog.
And you see all these guys attacking the pink jersey group right now. You were just mentioning Cataldo going off the front. They're all benefiting from these guys looking at each other. Look at this. Hejdahl's like, really? Is anybody going to ride? And quite honestly, nobody really has to.
Hejdahl just sitting at the front there. He's quite content with where he stands. These are the chasers behind Zog. Getting more guys in the group now. Amador is there, Cunego, Jose Serpa, Mateo Carrara, Thomas DeHent, the two Vacon Soleil riders right at the front, and number 211 is Carrara, the Italian. We've had two chase groups come together on the road, a combination of guys who were in an earlier breakaway and others who have attacked from the main field.
And this is the type of section of road where a group working together should be able to bring back Zog, and that's exactly what looks like is happening here. The bigger story for me is just how far back the pink jersey group has fallen. It started to pick back up some pace there because Peter Stetna's gone to the front, and as well they now have Christian Vande Velde there for Ryder Hejdahl. But for a long time, all those main guys in the GC were looking at each other, and all these guys were going up the road.
And in this chase group, you have Thomas DeHent, 8th place in the GC at 5 minutes 40 seconds down, and then Damiano Cunego, 2 places below him in 10th at 6:09 behind the pink jersey. So both of those guys in this group, that's almost up to the race leader, and still 4.5 minutes ahead of the pink jersey group at the moment.
So those guys, you know, they are pressing a little bit the general classification, but the climb is so big, I really don't think that Hejdahl has to be too concerned about these guys at all right now, especially considering that he now has Stetna and Vande Velde with him.
So they are coming up to Zog. He has been passed with just over 30K remaining. Now try to get back on the end of that line, and that's not easy.
Well, Zog is a climbing specialist, but he's always been really in the service of other riders, so he's been more of a super domestique. And now it's Christian Vande Velde on the front there through the dirt section.
Van de Velde went in the earlier breakaway of 14 riders. He's just now dropped back to help out Ryder Hejdahl. Peter Stetina had been leading the way for the big Canadian up until now. And this is now the new front of the race. It's a 7-man group. They are just about 7 kilometers away from the start of the Stelvio.
So we have Jan Izagirre and Mikel Nieve in the orange. Cunego there, third wheel. It is the Estonian for Astana, Tano Kangert, in 4th position, actually 3rd now. Amador, the Movistar rider, who also picked up a stage win earlier this race. Obviously Zog, they just picked up. And the last man there for Vacances Soleil is Thomas de Hent.
Oh, eating some dust on this road. The cars, the other riders, blowing the dust back through the field.
It's pretty unpleasant when you have all the Hejdahl waving them on. You know, they want to film it, but it kicks up a lot of dust into the face of the riders.
Those motorcycles, especially at such a high rate of speed. And when you're Garmin Barracuda leading the way, you get the brunt of it. And it's stretched out because of the very brisk pace now set by the team of the man who sits second in the GC, Ryder Hejdahl, 17 seconds behind Joaquim Rodriguez. Jan Izagirre of Euskaltel in the orange and black at the front of the race right now, leading this 7-man group. There's his teammate Mikel Nieve today. And now back to the pink jersey group once more. They are trimming the deficit under 4 minutes.
Trimming it quickly. 3 kilometers of dirt there for the guys to have to endure. It looks like the guys on the front at least survived without a puncture.
Amador now at the back end of this group. Izagirre, a stage winner at this year's Giro, still at the front. Cunego has been present in a lot of breaks at the front on more than one occasion at this year's Giro, but still looking for his first stage win. Trying to solidify Hejdahl's position at the top of the GC going into the time trial tomorrow to win his first ever Grand Tour.
Still getting the calories in. Still going for hard food, actually. Look at that. Not even to the gels.
It's a relaxed man who can eat solid foods this late in a tough stage.
Well, it's not easy. Sometimes it takes a while to actually get that stuff chewed up without sucking the pieces down into your windpipe in the process.
All right, they will start the Stelvio from Bormio. This side provides the shorter route up the Stelvio. Relatively speaking, it's still over 22 kilometers long, but there's different ways you can approach the Stelvio and go up this legendary climb. And the riders at the Giro today will do it from the historic ski town of Bormio. First used in 1956 at the Giro d'Italia. This is the west side approach to the Stelvio summit.
It's a very cruel approach to Bormio and the Stelvio because they've already really been going uphill for the better part of 20 kilometers. It's just been a valley with some steeper pitches at times. So it's been a very grinding approach to the town of Bormio, and then they have the real monster. And it doesn't start out immediately steep, but it gets pretty hard pretty quickly.
It's a storied winter sports town. They host a World Cup alpine skiing race, which is one of the most demanding in the world here every December. The first time the climb was used in the Giro at all was from a different side back in 1953, and it was really one of the most memorable times they climbed the Stelvio. Fausto Coppi won that day. The last time they've used the Stelvio prior to today, 2005, when Jose Ruano won on the Stelvio, and he started this year's Giro but pulled out just a couple of days ago.
Izagirre continuing to flog himself on the front of this group for his team leader, Mikel Nieve. But they are continuing, well, actually they were losing time, but now they've actually picked up a couple of seconds and ticking up closer to 4 minutes.
So they are starting the climb. Still about 4 minutes back. this group, led by Garmin Barracuda, Stetina and Van de Velde pacing Hejdahl at the front. Our 7 leaders going through Bormio. And pretty soon, they'll get into the thick of things. This climb at 22.4K altogether, averaging 7%. The maximum of 12% comes just about halfway at 11.4K remaining in the stage.
Bormio, a town very versed in professional cycling, having the Stelvio up this side. If you go up a different pass, you end up on the Gavia. And of course, they've just come over the Mortirolo. 3 massive mountains and all very iconic. As well, a lot of professional cycling teams have done training camps in Bormio so they can do those climbs.
It's the second highest paved mountain pass in Europe. The Col de Lizarraine over in France is the only other higher one. And climbing up today to over 9,000 feet. Highest summit finish in Grand Tour history. As the 39th and final climb of this year's Giro d'Italia, and at the end of a day of 44 miles of climbing altogether. How's that to spend a Saturday?
It's pretty brutal. Pete Stetina's still on the front. I asked him how much superhuman power he could gain by being in this position with having Hejdahl so close to such a monumental victory. And all he could say was, it's simply an amazing motivator. Look at Pete Stetina on the front, still his second Giro d'Italia, his second Grand Tour, riding everything he can for Hejdahl here.
Ryder Hejdahl could be a defining day in his career. That group trails by 4 minutes as our leaders are now on the Stelvio. Group is thinned out somewhat, but back here at the pink jersey group, Christian Van de Velde, as Wouters just pointed out, doing tremendous tempo work for Hejdahl, who's second wheel. The other GC riders are right there. The pink jersey of Joaquim Rodriguez, Michele Scarpone, Ivan Basso, and the white jersey of best young rider Rigoberto Urán with his teammate Sergio Henao.
And Basso is there with the teammate, Damiano Caruso, so he's got another guy to use if things get critical and he needs a teammate to close things down. And once again, exactly as Wouters described the importance of the team, it cannot be understated in professional cycling. These guys cannot do it without the help of somebody to put them in position to where they can utilize their strengths when it's most important.
And Garmin Barracuda coming to the Giro for the first time to ride as a team for the general classification this year. Could they possibly win it with that first ever ambition? We'll find out. Over the summit. Snow at the top, over 9,000 feet in elevation. Second highest paved mountain pass in all of Europe. Coming at the end of the longest mountain stage of this year's Giro. And it offers the Cimocoppi Prize, which is an award given to the first rider over the highest point in the Giro every year, and no doubt the Stelvio is the highest point here in the 95th edition. So the first man over is going to get a stage win, the Cimocoppi Prize, and have his name remembered for quite a long time.
Thomas de Hent is the man making the biggest inroads toward that. He is a man who has won big stages of big races by long solos. This has not been a long solo for him today, but earlier this year he won stage 7 at Paris-Nice after being off the front for 170 kilometers with Rein Terme initially and then finishing it off on his own. Last year he won stage 7 of the Tour de Suisse with an hour-long solo from a long break. So he's got that diesel type of characteristic that really suits him, winning by being alone for a long time.
Hejdahl doesn't have to win. He just has to basically stay where he is right now. Ride around the other GC riders and preserve the time gaps. Michele Scarpone has to attack, so does Rodriguez. Again, Hejdahl's not in the race leader's pink jersey, but a 17-second deficit is nothing considering the time trial differences between Hejdahl and the only man who sits ahead of him on the GC in Joaquim Rodriguez. And the time trial will close out the Giro tomorrow in Milan. Here's de Hent, our leader, who last year also finished 6th on stage 19 of the Tour de France on the legendary Alpe d'Huez climb after suffering a collarbone fracture. So he knows something about these storied, very rich, historic climbs in cycling history.
Big difference, obviously. Big difference, obviously, between the Stelvio and the Alpe d'Huez. The Alpe d'Huez has a lot of fanfare around it because it's in the Tour de France, and the Tour de France gets so much media exposure. But this Stelvio is gigantic compared to the Alpe d'Huez. Believe me, I've ridden both of them. The Alpe d'Huez is nothing compared to the Stelvio.
The thing about it is, it's one of the grandest stages in Grand Tour cycling. And no matter what sport you're talking about, every sport has those magical platforms. In tennis, it's Wimbledon. Golf, it's St. Andrews or Augusta. Baseball, you have Wrigley Field and Fenway. And as an athlete, you always want to perform at your best on the biggest stages. And in cycling, it is things like the Stelvio, the Alpe d'Huez, the Ventoux, Hautacam, Sestriere, the Zoncolan, the Galibier. Those are the iconic mountains. And when it's not just a GC battle, you want to get a stage win because then you write your chapter in cycling history by doing that.
Absolutely. Guys that win on those climbs, it is a huge deal for them. If Thomas de Gendt can stay away and win this stage, it makes his Giro d'Italia fantastic. He came in saying for the first time he was going to ride for the general classification. He was hoping for a top 15 overall. The man has had a pretty solid race, and he is doing an incredible ride right now on the stage.
One of the riders from the La Gazzetta dello Sport national newspaper that first created the Giro said that the gods live on the mountains, and that defines these cyclists, their performance on the biggest mountains in Grand Tour cycling. And Thomas de Gendt trying to make his mark today, the solo leader right now and leading the pink jersey group by over 4 minutes with 11K left to go. Steepest part of the climb here at just about 12%. He's halfway through it.
And he sits, though he does sit quite a ways down in the overall classification in terms of time, 5:40. He's in 8th place. He could actually ride himself into the top 5 general classification by the end of today and tomorrow's stage.
44. Van de Velde still at the front. Caruso is behind him for Liquigas and then Basso. Here's Hejdahl on the right-hand side of the screen for Garmin Barracuda.
Remember that Hejdahl, even if he does get ganged up upon, he can lose some time today and almost certainly be okay in the time trial tomorrow to get back a fair amount.
Looks like a kindergartner's etch-a-sketch. The switchbacks on the Stelvio. De Gendt, first man on the road. Coming up on the final 9K. The highest summit finish in Grand Tour history. Snow at the top at over 9,000 feet. There's often snow on top of the Stelvio most of the year. And Hejdahl sitting just in front of Basso.
It snows up on the Stelvio sometimes in the middle of the summer.
We've had to cancel stages of the Giro before, scheduled for the Stelvio because of the snowfall in the month of May.
De Gendt looks great. He looks really good right now. This is Amador coming back from that early breakaway. But De Gendt, look at the gap. Still over 4 minutes. He's going to win the stage.
From that pink jersey group has attacked yet. So we'll see how much anticipated attacks may take time out of De Gendt, but right now he's riding himself up in the general classification.
You see the flag blowing there, a little bit of a head crosswind. So it's depending on exactly where they are on the mountain, but it's very exposed from here to the top. There are no trees left, and so any wind, there you go. They will be in it.
Now, somebody who watched Fausto Coppi climb the Stelvio for the first time back in 1953
What did you think of it?
Well, I wasn't there that day.
Oh, okay.
But I have been told by reliable sources that the people who watched it said that the climb can be translated into numbers that serves to document it, but also to diminish it. Because sometimes you just can't quantify what this climb is all about in the Giro d'Italia, what it means to the riders, the people of Italy, how it impacts the race. And it's having a big impact on Thomas de Gendt's GC position right now, the way he is riding here. Virtual standings, he's just a half minute back.
Well, there's still a lot of racing to go for these guys. This climb feels like an eternity. They will be on this climb for over an hour in total. It is a massive mountain to be going up, not at a casual pace, but literally right on the edge, almost the whole way up.
A look of a grand tour on the final weekend. Twisting switchbacks, narrow roads, exposed mountains, jagged peaks, snow up top, and a GC battle poised to unfold down below.
Goes to the front and starts worrying about de Gendt. He's sunk. Gaudret, the first man to go.
John Gaudret attacking from the pink jersey group. He was on the podium at the Giro last year, finishing in third. Lost a lot of time early in this year's race. His team had a disastrous team time trial, so he's always been on the back foot. He's 5.5 minutes down.
Got a stage win at the Giro last year, his first ever Grand Tour stage victory. Came into the race this year with the hopes of repeating a top three, but it's just been a tough race for him so far through 20 days. And that's a now closing it down.
So that attack went nowhere.
Cycling.
Hopefully that guy goes somewhere, but not here. So wait now, leading that pink jersey group, and look at Van de Velde.
Oh, there we go. So Van de Velde has done his job. It was a massive one indeed, and now Hejdahl is isolated.
So a 5.5 minute gap from this pink jersey group to our leader Thomas de Gendt. He's 6.5 kilometers from the summit finish. This is Sergio Wainau of Team Sky riding at the front of the pink jersey collection. He's got his teammate and best young rider, Rigoberto Urán, behind him. Then rider Hejdahl, third wheel. Scarponi is there, Basso as well. And the pink jersey of Joaquim Rodriguez sitting behind Scarponi, the third wheel from the last man in line.
So you may ask yourself, why is Wainau on the front? He's on the front because Urán could lose his GC position to de Gendt. That type of riding by Wainau helps Hejdahl immensely because he has somebody to set tempo with other ambitions.
Thomas de Gendt, our leader, riding into the snow. And also much colder temperatures, again upper 40s near the summit of the Stelvio today. On this final Saturday at the Giro, the last open road stage on the 39th and final climb of the Giro this year. Damiano Cunego has been chasing. And he's been in this position by himself for quite a while now.
Best stage finish this team has had was a long time ago when Scarponi took second to Tiralongo back on stage 7.
5 minutes with under 5K left to go.
Gaudret putting in another dig. Notice the physio tape all over his knees there. Some strains.
Pretty bold to be wearing the pink shoes in his position. And now Cunego, under 5K left. A lonely position for him. They're trying to solidify his GC standings and move up much more safely inside the top 10 today. And up the road, Thomas de Gendt, our lone leader. The 11th time they've used the Stelvio climb in Giro history. This road originally built back in the early 1800s by the Austrian Empire when they were looking to connect their province of Lombardia, which at that time the Austrian Empire owned. They were looking to connect that to the rest of Austria.
Giant battles up at the summit as well in World War I, and it eventually became Italy further down. It was always Italy on this side. But there have been a lot of battles waged on this mountain over the centuries, for sure, and some very great ones on the bike as well.
The path and these roads haven't changed all that much from the early 1800s when they were first created for socio-political reasons. And now, used here in the Giro for the first time in the last 7 years. And Thomas de Gendt in in a position now to be the first man to the top, as the GC battle has slowed down here, with Hejdahl riding at the top of the screen, looking at the others. Pozzovivo on his wheel.
Okay, things are getting very interesting to me. Look at Hejdahl. He actually is now concerned about De Hent. Everybody is saying, look, if you don't ride, he'll ride into the pink jersey. You have to go. This is going to expose him to attacks.
So he has to worry about so many other possibilities, guys that are behind him. Here on the general classification, De Hent, who's up the road, he can only respond to so much. He doesn't have Van de Velde anymore, so he's on his own. You can't answer every attack and worry about everybody, so what do you do?
This is a very, very tricky moment for Hejdahl. All those other guys, even the pink jersey, the man leading the race, they've all looked at Hejdahl at this point and said, you're the best time trialist of us. We're not going to help you right now. Go get him, pal.
And if you don't,
totally turn this race upside down.
well, for the pink jersey of Rodriguez, for Scarponi, for Basso, they're counting on Hejdahl leading the chase to De Hent to preserve his standing on the GC and not let De Hent ride into the race lead or really get that much closer. They're counting on Hejdahl to burn himself out perhaps in the final few kilometers, at least till they get to the point where he's vulnerable to attacks from behind.
And for my money right now, I never thought I would say this 5K ago, the most dangerous rider in the bike race is De Hent to Hejdahl. Hejdahl can bury himself right now and lose a little bit of time to the highest placed guys on GC at the start of the day, but keep that gap coming down to De Hent. He's looking like he's suffering, but he's looking like he's been suffering all day. You just can't tell with Ryder. It was the same way he looked yesterday, and he dropped all the other guys.
So Thomas De Hent trailing Ryder Hejdahl by 5 minutes 27 seconds at the start of the day. And right now the lead 5:22 on Hejdahl's position in this GC group with 2.5K to go for De Hent.
Now remember, no time bonus at the summit, but they still have the time trial to settle the score tomorrow.
And how about the relative differences between De Hent and Hejdahl going into that?
It's all about who's going to have the best day in the TT.
Hejdahl put under the most pressure we've seen him placed under so far at the Giro. On the final summit of 39 at this race, the iconic Stelvio. This is Mikel Nieve at the 3K banner. But De Hent is the first man on the road. Somehow minimize the damage being done by Thomas De Hent.
Well, he is bringing it back ever so slowly, but he's got a long way to climb still. Look at this, Basso coming off, unreal.
And that's Aran just behind him, Gaudret behind him. So it's Hejdahl at the front, then Domenico Pozzovivo, Michele Scarpone, and the pink jersey of Joaquim Rodriguez.
So that shows just how big this effort is by the tall Canadian. Is not even attacking and fracturing the lead group. Look at this, Pozzovivo pulls off. He has had it. Scarpone closing it down.
So Scarpone pulls onto the wheel of Ryder Hejdahl, the pink jersey in tow with Rodriguez. Epic landscape at the top of the Stelvio, over 9,000 feet.
Ryder Hejdahl has a massive motor going on the front right now. I didn't expect him to be able to fracture the group when he was on the front like that.
Basso, a little bit of daylight between himself and the group, trying to reel him back in. Ryder Hejdahl, followed by Scarpone, Rodriguez, and Sergio A now. This is the leader, Thomas De Hent, the Belgian, with a lead of 5 minutes inside of 2K to the summit finish. Again, just 5:27, starting the day behind Ryder Hejdahl on the GC, so he's taken a lot of that time back.
Hejdahl needs to be calm. He needs to stay collected. He can't overcook it right now, because then he could blow up. He will make the best time up this climb if he goes steady all the way to the line.
And waiting for those riders to hit the 3K banner.
So about 5 minutes per kilometer for these guys right now, as they are absolutely blasted. 20 days into the race, and Basso is coming unhitched, and he may be seeing that front of the group for the last time today.
Basso dropped for the second time in as many days on the big mountains in northern Italy.
He did everything he could. His team rode a massive tempo for him day after day, and he eventually just couldn't do it yesterday and today. The only two-time winner of the Giro in the race is Hejjdal, Scarponi, Rodriguez at the front. Now Gaudret and Uran, the next group of three.
Hejjdal, Scarponi, and Rodriguez. Neither Scarponi nor Rodriguez has launched a move, making Hejjdal chase down the leader Thomas de Gent. Basso coming off the back.
Hejjdal rising to the occasion here like a true champion. He's never been in a position like this in his life, and he is rising to the challenge, but it is a massive challenge indeed from Thomas de Gent.
25 from the Cima Coppi, the highest point in this year's race.
Oh, Scarponi is gone.
His first attack.
Okay, here we go. More pressure on Hejjdal.
Michele Scarponi, a 139 down on the pink jersey as the day started.
And really, Scarponi should not be a concern at this point. Hejjdal needs to go steady and ride the most steady pace he can. Otherwise, he will lose more time over the top of this climb to de Gent. Right now, if he stays on it, he might bring back more time on de Gent.
De Gent at the red kite, that is 1 kilometer to the summit of the Stelvio. Look at the deep snow framing the roadways. That is Scarponi, 122 behind rider Hejjdal in the GC standings.
When you're the first Italian on the climb, man, it's a little hometown advantage.
There's Hejjdal, followed by the pink jersey of Joaquim Rodriguez. Scarponi attacked 3 times yesterday. This is his first today. Hejjdal has been chasing Thomas de Gent at the front. Now he's got both de Gent and Scarponi up the road, and the pink jersey glued to his wheel.
Let's step back for a minute. 6 hours, 51 minutes. I hate being in the office that long, let alone on the bike.
Almost 7 hours on a spectacular mountain stage, the 20th day of the season's first Grand Tour, and now the GC battle sparkling to life here on the upper slopes of the Stelvio. There's our leader, de Gent. Look at how everybody's wrapped up. Temperatures in the mid-40s. Scarponi again has dropped rider Hejjdal and the pink jersey of Joaquim Rodriguez. You see them in the background.
And still, it is Hejjdal chasing de Gent, though. He's got this baby in the bag. The question is, how much of a gap will he preserve? This climb is so long, it has isolated every rider, put them right on their limit, and they just keep it as long as they can.
Here's Cunego. Remember, he was chasing de Gent by himself for a long time. Scarponi's teammate. Scarponi has attacked.
Oh, that's right. I completely forgot. So Scarponi is not the first Italian on the road. Hadn't seen him in so long.
Now Basso, somehow trying to salvage his Giro, but it's slipping away.
Yeah, there's nothing he can salvage right now in terms of a top place on the podium.
Scarponi trying to take back the time on Hejjdal on the pink jersey. Ivan Basso, the 2-time Giro champion, will not be a third this year. A few hundred meters to the summit for de Gent.
He's won some big stages in his career, but nothing like this. A massive ride for the Belgian. This is huge.
And what does it do for his GC position? 8th as the day started, 5:40 out of the pink jersey. He put over 5 minutes into the pink jersey group on the road. How much of that have they recovered here in these final few kilometers. Now 250 meters from the summit finish.
Now look at all the snow on the summit. What a backdrop for an incredible battle.
After almost 7 hours, up to over 9,000 feet. Michele Scarponi riding away from Hejdahl and the pink jersey, but nobody is going to catch the 25-year-old Belgian Thomas de Gent, who is going to become the 11th different first-time Grand Tour stage winner at this year's Giro d'Italia, and this will be a memorable one.
The most important day in his career so far. Not only a massive stage win, but a huge assault on the pink jersey. Let's watch the clock.
Damiano Cunego next. Cunego has been isolated for quite a while on this climb. He'll be second on the stage. His teammate Scarponi is just down the road behind him, having attacked the pink jersey group.
And they decided not to pull Cunego back to help Scarponi. I guess they feel that Scarponi has no chance to win the overall at this point, so it's not really worth it.
And the reception for a former Giro winner. In mind, de Gent as the stage winner, 5:40 behind the Maglia Rosa as the day started. Mikel Nieve is coming up next here. He was with de Gent for a while on this stage before getting dropped, and now here's Scarponi.
Scarponi needed some time to make it even up to where Hejdahl was.
Here's Hejdahl. Oh, and the pink jersey's ahead of Hejdahl now.
Still not a concern for Hejdahl. At this point, the concern is the gap to de Gent.
That's Mikel Nieve, number 61 for Euskaltel. He's approaching the finish now. And Joaquim Rodriguez is going to go by Michele Scarponi, who attacked earlier. They have 400 meters to the finish.
Big surge by Rodriguez, but de Gent just put in such a monster ride on this climb. I never would have expected him to have such a big gap at the top.
So Joaquim Rodriguez starting the day leading Ryder Hejdahl by 17 seconds. Figures he needs at least a couple of minutes going into the time trial on Hejdahl. And there you see Hejdahl way in the background. Here's Nieve at the finish. Almost 3 minutes behind our winner, de Gent.
Remember, 5:27, the gap between de Gent and Hejdahl coming into the day.
All right, so now here comes Joaquim Rodriguez.
Rodriguez looking set here to hold the Maglia Rosa for the day, but tomorrow is such a rough stage for him that he will almost certainly lose it.
Rodriguez will gain time on Hejdahl. Here comes Scarponi next, followed by Ryder Hejdahl, who had to do so much work by himself there in the final few kilometers. So, he has taken back some time from de Gent.
Big ride there in the last couple of kilometers by Hejdahl, bringing that gap down to about 3:35. That should do it for him. But it was an ugly battle up the top of the Stelvio.
It was right around 2 minutes or so that he reeled back in from de Gent, who was threatening to take his GC position, or at least make it close enough to be a big concern for Hejdahl.
Well, there's no doubt that on this climb, Hejdahl earned everything he has gotten in this race. He's earned it along the way, but he was severely tested today.
Gadre next across the line, 4.5 minutes behind our winner. Now Rigoberto Urán in the white jersey. Here comes Ivan Basso in the green for Liquigas Cannondale. Sergio A now, Iran's teammate for Team Sky. So for the second straight day, Basso losing time in the tall mountains. Domenico Pozzovivo also coming up. So Iran, A now, and Basso here crossing the line.
It's also a 136-mile day in addition to the ridiculous mountain here at the end and a 20,000-foot total gain on the day.
And you got to be ready to play on the sport's biggest stage. And for the Giro, this was it for this 95th edition. Hejdahl answered the challenge today with the wind swirling at the summit. Domenico Pozzovivo now coming up to the line, 5.5 minutes behind our winner. So Thomas de Gent wins the stage. Ryder Hejdahl solidifies his GC position, and we'll come back with the post-race report right after this. The iconic Stelvio summit in northern Italy, covered in snow, and the site for the highest point in this year's Giro d'Italia, and the highest moment in the career of today's stage winner, the Belgian Thomas de Gent.
Phenomenal assault, not only on the stage win, but on the pink jersey. He actually looked like he could be riding into the pink or be very competitive for the pink in the TT tomorrow, but Ryder dug deep, pulled back a couple crucial minutes in the final couple of kilometers, but still, this will never be forgotten by Thomas de Gent.
A 6-year pro, 25 years of age. Thomas de Gent wins the Queen Stage, wins the Cima Coppi as the first man over the highest point in this year's Giro. He also wins the Torriani Trophy for that Cima Coppi performance.
Last year, 170 kilometers in the break en route to his stage win at the Tour de Suisse. Earlier this year, an hour solo en route to winning his mountain stage win at Paris-Nice. And then once again, he uncorks a big one, man. This guy does some big days.
All slips back to half a minute behind Joaquim Rodriguez. Michele Scarpone now almost 2 minutes behind, and Thomas de Gent has vaulted up into fourth. We are live on stage 21 of the Giro d'Italia, the final day, an individual time trial in the city of Milan. Steve Schlanger, Todd Gogolski, it all comes down to this last day of the season's first Grand Tour. Joaquim Rodriguez leading Ryder Hejdahl by 31 seconds. That is out on the course. Geraint Thomas of Team Sky taking the lead at the second intermediate checkpoint on a course that is 28.2 kilometers long. The Kiwi, Jesse Sargent of the Radio Shack Nissan team is the current leader, but Thomas having a good ride to this point.
This is a day for the specialist. Notice some cobblestones. Thomas just blasting over some tracks as well. Those are very sketchy on the time trial bike. You can easily get pinch flats on those, but this time trial, the final day of the race to settle the general classification, and it's very tight on the top.
157 riders set to start, all in 1 minute intervals until we get down to the final 15. Then it'll be 2 minutes between riders. And the top guys on the GC, as always, will be last. The final 5 will be Ivan Basso, Thomas de Gent, Michele Scarpone, Ryder Hejdahl, and the overall leader, Joaquim Rodriguez. It's a flat but somewhat technical course, really favors the specialists. Power and technique will produce a good ride in Milan today, and we are underway on stage 21. No city has hosted the Giro d'Italia more times than its spiritual home, Milan. Second largest city in the country, and now the venue for stage 21, the individual time trial on the final day of the season's first Grand Tour. And this is the GC situation. Joaquim Rodriguez leading Ryder Hejdahl by just about a half minute. Everybody else almost 2 minutes or more behind. So it really sets up as a battle between Rodriguez and Hejdahl in Milan. And it's a different distance than what we thought. The course was just changed late yesterday, going from 30K down to 28.2.
And so it's shortened to 17.5 miles. little bit tricky at the beginning, a little bit tricky in the end, kind of wide open for the rest of the course. The shorter it is, the better for Rodriguez, but this is a day where it's all in play.
And now we are live with Team Sky's Geraint Thomas, and he has led each of the two splits out on the course. Now, coming up towards the end of his ride, Jesse Sargent, the Kiwi for Radio Shack Nissan, currently has the best time at 33:59. He's the leader, but Thomas is threatening to knock him off the top of the standings.
Geraint Thomas is a man who spent a lot of time in the track very recently. He's just come back into the road here in the last part of this part of the spring season. And so he's very good at the time trial discipline. He struggled a little bit with the length of the first time trial. This is longer, but he's now got all these miles in his legs, and he is just storming this course.
He is inside the final kilometer, and this stage ends in the Piazza del Duomo, the big cathedral and symbolic town square in Milan. First time they finished here was in 1972. They like to come back to the Duomo region every chance they get. And now Geraint Thomas looking to take the lead with half a K left to ride.
Jesse Sargent from New Zealand has held that leader's top position for a long time, but Thomas has been just drilling it through this course. And look at him here as he'll come flying into the final corner.
A couple of technical corners inside the final K. Last one at about 250 meters. Quick right, quick left, and then the sprint for the finish line. Geraint Thomas. A spirited ride on the final day after serving as a lead-out man in the sprints for Mark Cavendish at this year's Giro. 100 meters to the finish line.
Well, he's going to set the best time for sure, Steve. It's just a question of what big the gap is.
Geraint into first by 14 seconds. So a new leader on stage 21 at the Giro d'Italia. And now back to the start for the five-time Italian national time trial champion, Marco Pinotti of BMC. Last year, Pinotti, a big crash at the Giro, but coming back this year and finishing the race, his home Grand Tour. As we're up further on the course now with the Belarusian Branislav Samolau of the Movistar team, who's been in some breaks at this year's Giro. Movistar team picking up a stage win with Francisco Ventoso in a sprint earlier at the Giro.
Finishing off these Grand Tours with a time trial stage is, though it's short, it's fairly cool for the riders because it is such a hard discipline to excel at. And some of the guys that are down a little bit in the general classification, well, it may not be so stressful for them unless they have the option or the possibility to win a stage. But the general classification men that come later, there is so much stress riding on this 28.2 kilometer day that it is a true nail-biter for them.
157 riders set to start the time trial today. Everybody going in 1-minute intervals until we get down to the last 15. Then it's 2-minute between riders. And so we'll see some riders catching others. Sometimes they'll catch their 1, maybe 2-minute men, depending on the time trialing skills. So it's not unusual to see riders in this sort of a circuit catching other riders on the road. Adriano Malori is the Italian for Team Lampre, who is one of 5 guys to wear the pink jersey at this year's race. Well, all of the top GC riders are coming up later. So what are they doing right now? What is the preparation that they are going through with so much pressure, so much scrutiny, so much riding on this stage to get ready for this effort that will be just over 28 kilometers?
Well, as you were mentioning just a second ago, some guys will catch each other, and sure enough, this is Huzarski picking up a rider, or actually being passed maybe by Malori there, the Italian time trial champion. But back to the GC men, they are doing an easy warm-up in a light gear for a long time on their stationary trainer. They're getting their head into gear to put themselves through just over 30 minutes of severe pain that is so important to be completely focused on. You have to nail every corner, and you have to be physically just exactly at your limit. the whole time.
And something for Joaquim Rodriguez, who will be the last man on the course wearing the pink jersey. He is already at a disadvantage because he's not the best time trialist and certainly will give some time up to Ryder Hesjedal, but something else working against him. He was doing recon of the course earlier today and he crashed. He scratched up his left arm. He'll be okay to ride, but psychologically, what must that do for a guy who's not good at a time trial to begin with?
It certainly doesn't help, and you can see they have these big paver stones. There's some smaller cobbles. There are tram tracks in some of these corners. This is the typical Milan stage for the Giro, and a few years ago, actually, the riders protested a circuit race because it was so crazy. Well, in this TT, there's nothing to protest. You just got to hold on and make it through these obstacles.
Now back to Rodriguez, though. Just think about what he must be dealing with emotionally right now, having crashed, just riding the course for recon earlier today and knowing how much pressure is on him later on with the lead going out last.
Yeah, it's a terrible thing to crash in recon because you want to have your head mentally in the gladiator frame of mind. You want to be able to literally just put yourself right at that limit and hold it there. And if you let your mind wander even a little bit, your chances are done. And Rodriguez needs to be laser perfect in his concentration today to hold on to that jersey.
Now waiting for other riders to come up to the finish. In case you're wondering about Taylor Phinney, the American who won the opening individual time trial on stage 1. He started off third on the day. He was the third man down the start ramp and currently is sitting in 9th position.
And unfortunately for Taylor, he went off course. I talked with his coach, Neil Henderson, who was in the car behind him. And he said 3 kilometers into it, there was a right turn on the course. The lead moto that Taylor was following went straight through it, so did Taylor. And unfortunately, he lost about 15 seconds, plus the loss of momentum, and psychologically with 25K to go, he's sure it didn't help.
This is Ben Hermans, just outside the top 20. Now Alessandro Ballan, his teammate, also going off course as well on a different part of the course. So 2 BMC riders on what should be a pretty straightforward circuit. Yes, there's some technical corners, but on an urban circuit, there should be enough marshals directing riders which way to go. They shouldn't be having these sorts of problems.
Completely agree. Oliveira here is a solid time trialist, Portuguese national TT champion. He's a man who could have a top 10 ride, but back to the situation of riders going off course. I didn't see Taylor go off course. I did see Ballan go off course, and it was definitely the mistake of the person directing traffic. And so, it was not Ballan's fault. The guys are cross-eyed. They're following the motorcycle. The motorcycle has to be on the course, and the marshal has to keep them there.
Adriano Malori, get number 5 here for the Lampre team. He was the shortest holder of the pink jersey, just 1 day of all 5 guys who have worn it so far.
He was actually very much thrilled to wear the jersey on his Grand Tour of being an Italian, a home Grand Tour, and he knew that he wasn't going to hold on to it, and he even said, I'm here to help my team leader, and that's Michele Scarpone, even today while I'm in the pink jersey.
We're back to Branislaw Samolau now. Now what a Giro d'Italia it has been. We've had winners from 10 different nations, 11 different first-time Grand Tour stage winners at this year's race. 13 different teams have won a stage. That's more than half the teams in the field. As I mentioned, 5 different overall race leaders. The pink jersey has changed hands 6 different times, and it's likely to change hands for a 7th time here on the final day, which would mark the highest number of lead changes in any Giro in the last 5 years. Now out on course live, this is Gustav Larsson. Certainly a threat in any time trial he enters.
He has won the final TT in the Giro in the last couple of years. He actually dislodged Marco Pinotti from the top step of the podium when he did that. He's very good technically, and he's also been on the podium at both the Olympics and the World Championships in this discipline. So he's always knocking on the door at that very high level like the Olympics and the Worlds, and a day like today, he could certainly make his own.
He won the silver medal in Beijing at the Olympics in 2008. He's a 4-time Swedish national time trial champion. Now at 31 years of age, a little later in his career, but he can still ride this discipline. He is one of the specialists, and this course does favor a power specialist type of rider. Now Branislav Samolau, number 148 for Movistar.
So Marco Pinotti up the road. He has already come by Samolau. Pinotti, the 5-time Italian national champion you noted earlier. Pinotti had a very nasty crash last year in the Giro. And, you know, it's one of those things where you almost wonder if it's going to end a guy's career. It was very late in the race, in the rain. He and Craig Lewis, the American for HTC, they were teammates. They both stacked it into a sign in the road that wasn't marked when everybody was drilling it at about 33 miles an hour.
Well, Marco Pinotti just passing his 2-minute man out on the course. So he's passed 2 different riders. That was Emmanuel Sella of Androni that he just went by. And anytime you can pass riders, it's just adding to your energy, to your motivation, because you see yourself just moving up further and further. Those riders ahead of you serve like carrots, but conversely, when you get past, what a demoralizing prospect that is.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing about Larson that makes him so deadly in the TT is that he's super aero. Notice how narrow his forearms are and his elbows. There are 2 primary things that guys look at in the time trial to be aero. One is how high they are, the other is how narrow they are. This guy, though he is tall, is very narrow.
52.128 kilometers an hour.
So coming up on the checkpoint for Marco Pinotti. Now Emmanuel Sella now going through, well down as you would expect. And that was just a moment ago, Sella on this Androni team that really doesn't have any time trial specialists.
And you know, the interesting thing is you look at a guy like Pinotti, he's not a big guy, but he excels in the time trial. Perito, the race leader, is not a big guy. He falls apart in the time trial. Levi Leipheimer, not a big guy. He excels in the time trial. So typically big guys are better in the time trial, but it's not always that way.
Sylvester Schmid, a very interesting story the last several days in the mountains. He was going to be counted on to be one of the primary domestiques for Ivan Basso, but he had some mechanical issues, some other problems, multiple times on some of the key mountain stages.
And that really cost not only his entire team, but Ivan Basso, his leader, because it was one guy that they usually count on to set a wicked tempo on those climbs late in the race, and he was not there the last 3 mountain days.
I don't know if it would have really made a difference in the end, because Basso just could not keep the pace when it really got cranked up near the top of the summits. Juan Antonio Flecha, now the Spaniard for Team Sky, out on the road. His teammate Geraint Thomas has already set the best time, the leader in the clubhouse here in Milan. Now at 36 years of age, riding today in Milan, the capital of Lombardia, of which Pinotti is a native. He lives in this region. And to come back from that injury a year ago, to have this performance in his home Grand Tour on the final day, rebounding from the injury, potentially winning here, and earning a spot at the Olympic Games for the Italian national team. What a huge day this could be.
It's fantastic for Marco. He is one of the nicest guys, one of the most loved and respected guys on the circuit. Not only that, he may be the most meticulous rider in his preparation. He counts every calorie. He uses his power meter for every ride. The guy is like a rolling laboratory that uses every piece of data he can to get the most out of his body.
He's getting the most out of it today, no doubt. 1.5 kilometers away. Still with some time to work with here.
9th overall in the Giro back in 2010. He came in this year hoping to repeat a top 10, but realized he couldn't do that, decided to let that slip away and refocus his energies on this final time trial.
Well, a couple of wins so far this year for Pinotti. Won the sprints classification at País Vasco. Also was part of the BMC team that won the team time trial at the Giro del Trentino. Now 1 kilometer left to go in the individual TT in Milan. This is a terrific time.
Wow. This is going to be a storming ride for him. 800 meters to go. He's going to get into this tricky stuff here now.
A couple of technical corners in the last half K.
So still in the aero bars. He'll want to keep that aero position as long as possible. You see him going over more tracks. In 1990, Bauer got a double puncture in the TT and his aero bars and stacked it over some tracks like that at the Tour de Pont.
Now, Pinotti got his first professional win almost a decade ago. He became national time trial champion of Italy for the first time way back in 2005. And now here he is in the shadow of the Duomo in Milan, poised to take the lead in the TT on the final day of the Giro. Check this out. Around that final turn, Pinotti is coming and coming fast. Marco Pinotti, wire to wire, smashing the course in Milan. Geraint Thomas, the lead is gone. Marco Pinotti, welcome home in Milan, welcome back from injury and into first place by almost 40 seconds.
What a ride for the Italian time trial specialist. That was fantastic.
He led by a wide margin at each of the two splits. 15 seconds at the first, 26 seconds at the second, and added to the lead in the end. So on each third of the course, he built on his lead, now up by 39 seconds.
Larson has crashed, or a mechanical, one or the other. Oh, okay.
Or Caruso, actually. Looks like a Damiano Caruso.
Yeah. My bad
so
there.
That's somewhere else on the course. We had just seen Larson pass Eros Kopecky, the teammate of Damiano Caruso, and this is Caruso, number 125, who was the best young rider in the white jersey for a while at this year's Giro.
And he had designs on holding on to that jersey, but that was nowhere to be. This is Larson here, and already down quite a bit, 56 seconds. Wow, that's a lot.
And that was Eros Kopecky behind him. And now we're back to, it looks like, Damiano Caruso here after getting pushed. And that's never easy in a time trial because so much of it is mental to recover from anything, a crash, a mechanical, to get back and once again commit yourself to the ride.
Jesse Sargent, the early leader of the race, but that was soon taken away by Geraint Thomas with what looked to be possibly an untouchable time. But I don't think anybody could have expected Marco Pinotti to smoke that time by 39 seconds in just 17 and a half miles.
Now the first ever Giro d'Italia started here in Milan, May 13th, 1909 at 2:53 in the morning. So how's that for a wake-up call?
I thought our hour's bad.
So just before 3 a.m. in the morning, the riders took off in 1909, and some crazy stages back in those days, over 10, 12 hours. Sometimes the field was just 40 or 50 guys. It was a much different race back in the day. Now this is Rigoberto Urán, again in the white skin suit, best young rider in the race. That white jersey changed hands a few different times. Damiano Caruso wore it, Peter Stetina, now Rigoberto Urán. And we are down to the first of the final four riders, Thomas de Gendt, the Belgian for Vacances Soleil, and yesterday's stage winner on the iconic Stelvio. De Gendt looked like he was threatening to take the race lead yesterday when his lead got up to 5.5 minutes on Hesjedal and the other GC contenders. And considering the way that he can time trial, he would have been a serious threat coming into today. Remember, he was third in that long Tour de France time trial last season.
Indeed, he was. Sylvester Schmid finishing up his Giro here. As we've said, a little bit disappointing for him the last few mountain days, but at least he made it into Milan and he can be satisfied with that.
3.5 minutes down for Schmid. And Marco Pinotti, the Italian for BMC, the leader, as we work our way to the final riders in the TT.
So here's some good information about de Gendt. In that time trial stage 20 of the Tour last year, he was third. He defeated rider Hesjedal in that 42-kilometer time trial by 3.5 minutes. That tells you that this race is not over. If this man has a perfect ride and Hejdahl has a bad day, the pink jersey is still in play between him and Hejdahl, as well as Joaquim Rodriguez. Last year at the Tour de Suisse, stage number 9, 32-kilometer TT, De Hent defeated Hejdahl by 59 seconds. So that's closer to the distance of this race, and that gap much smaller.
It's something you have to keep in mind when you make the historical comparisons between guys in a time trial, as Michele Scarponi is starting next. He's the first of the final 3. You have to remember, riders perform differently depending on what's at stake for them in that particular TT. If they're riding for the GC, if they're out of the general classification picture, guys perform differently depending on how much they want it. I mean, you can look at time trials the last couple of years, and Joaquim Rodriguez, as poor as he has been in the discipline, he's beaten Hejdahl on more than one occasion. But Ryder Hejdahl, on balance, is clearly the better time trialist between himself and J-Rod.
Sure, and Michele Scarponi out on the course now, the defending champion. He is a man who doesn't specialize in this discipline. Ryder Hejdahl's director, Alan Piper, was telling me yesterday, the thing about Ryder, even though Piper is very nervous about today, he says Ryder is on the form of his life. He's relaxed. He's ready to get it done in this time trial.
That's De Hent on the left, Scarponi on the right. De Hent 147 behind Ryder Hejdahl in the standings. Now here he is, the 31-year-old from British Columbia, Ryder Hejdahl, with just 28.2 kilometers between himself and potentially becoming the first ever Canadian to win a Grand Tour. Hejdahl has been smooth, he's been poised and confident. When the attacks have come in the mountains, he's responded to them all. He's taken the initiative at certain times when you expected him to ride defensively, and now he's in a position to win the Giro d'Italia for the first time. He's a guy who says he always gets better, deep into the 3rd week of a Grand Tour, and now the chance to prove it.
Yesterday they had a very tough day. Van de Velde contributing greatly to the success of the team. Great ride by Van de Velde. 14th, 136 down. He's got to be really pleased with that.
And how about Christian Van de Velde? We mentioned how he helped Hejdahl, especially yesterday in the mountains, but it was back in 2008 at the Tour de France when Hejdahl supported Van de Velde to a top 5 performance at the Tour. So also a little payback coming from the American.
It's all about the love out there. Those guys go through some very, very rough moments over the course of a season, and they look out for each other like they're brothers.
Damiano Cunego, been very active in several breaks, including yesterday on the Stelvio, but has failed to win a stage at this year's race. Has to be a disappointment for a former Giro winner, one of only 3 in the field at this year's competition. So Cunego on the road, and the final man on the start ramp, just moments away from beginning the individual time trial, the pink jersey holder, Joaquim Rodriguez.
Crashing earlier in reconnaissance, he's got to shake that off. He's got to have the race of his life to win this Giro overall.
He leads Ryder Hejdahl by 31 seconds. The Giro d'Italia has only changed hands on the final day one time in its 94 years to this point. That was in 1984 when Francesco Moser beat Laurent Fignon in the individual time trial on the last day to win it. Will this be the second time? Perito has his work cut out for him. Not a time trial specialist, not as good as Hejdahl, but can he have the time trial that he's always hoped for in a Grand Tour when it's mattered most?
His director told me yesterday, it is not over yet. It will be difficult, but the race finishes at the finish line.
So they're all out on course now. Hejdahl starting 2 minutes ahead of Joaquim Rodriguez. They're riding for the Maglia Rosa on the final day of the Giro d'Italia. So at the first of 2 checkpoints outside the top 20. There's always going to be a difficult challenge in the TT for Basso, even if he was on level terms coming in. because he's not one of the top time trialists. He's okay, but he was going to have difficulty beating a guy like Hejdahl, but with the deficit that he faces on this final day, he's really on the back foot.
Basso coming in today in 5th overall.
Now Joaquin Rodriguez, he has a new time trial bike, spent time on the track, also the wind tunnel, looking for every possible way to improve his time trialing. But again, it really is the mental headspace that he has to get in. That might be the biggest hurdle for this guy.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, Piva has been just telling him, look, Perito, you need to ride your time trial bike at least once a week for a few hours, maybe a couple of rides. And Perito never wanted to do that, but he's starting to embrace the TT bike. If you don't embrace it, it's always going to smack you down.
Well, Thomas de Gent, the Belgian for Vacansoleil, winner of yesterday's stage, now a chance to make the podium, outside chance of winning the race. And how interesting is this? The fact that he was set to do the Tour de France this year, as he now comes up onto the first checkpoint, but he had made plans a couple of years ago to get married on June the 30th of this year, and that was before he knew that the Tour de France was going to get moved up by a week because of the Olympic Games in London. He didn't want to move the date because him and his fiancée had already planned to get married. And as you see the time check here, pretty good ride, 28 seconds down and in 5th for de Gent.
Pretty good, but not probably good enough to hurt Hejdahl.
So they didn't want to move the date, so instead of rearranging the wedding plans and doing the Tour this year, he said, I want to stick with the Giro. I'll also do the Vuelta and skip the Tour. So this guy was set to ride the Tour and not the Giro, and here he is sticking by the values, his fiancée, and it's paying off with a podium opportunity at the Italian Grand Tour.
I think he should ride onto the podium today. I think very strong likelihood he will finish 3rd overall in this race. What a ride yesterday. And actually after the race yesterday, he told everybody that he never thought he actually had a chance to ride into the pink jersey. Even when he heard that he had over 5 minutes with a few K to go, he still didn't expect it.
Michele Scarponi coming in 3rd place on the GC. If he fails to finish on the podium, it would be the first time since 1995 that an Italian would not be on the podium at the Giro d'Italia.
That's not a good. That's not good at all. Although I have to say, the Italians have to love the way this battle has played out. I mean, you heard the crowd roaring for Ryder Hejdahl as he rode off the starting ramp. They have really enjoyed this battle. It's amazing. After all the climbing they have done, after 20 previous days of racing, starting in Denmark, and this time trial is so critical to settle the final podium.
The organizers wanted it to come down to the final time trial today in Milan, and that's just the way it's worked out. Joaquin Rodriguez. He's beaten Hejdahl in a couple of different time trials when they've gone head-to-head, but the circumstances were much different. Twice, it's happened at the Tour of the Basque Country, but those have been on courses that were shorter, more technical, hillier, and more suited to Rodriguez. And also, Rodriguez was riding for the GC in those races. Hejdahl was not. So again, it goes back to what I talked about earlier. What's at stake for a guy in a time trial? That will so often determine the differences in their performances.
Sure, their objectives. Are they there for the general classification? Have they been there for stages? Are they using the race to ride into fitness for a later objective? All those things are critically important. You can't just look at the numbers and say, well, here it is on paper, and this is the chance of one guy to beat another.
Yeah, I mean, just think about it. At País Vasco this year, Hejdahl was 52nd in the time trial. Rodriguez was 6th. Think about that disparity when Hejdahl is clearly the better time trialist.
And it was a minute 33 seconds that Hejdahl lost to Rodriguez. It's a big time gap.
Clearly, it's different ambitions at different times.
Very interesting position there with Hejdahl, dropping the head down, filling up the pocket with his head so that he's more aero. And he's got the short time trial helmet, so it doesn't have the big fin going up in the air. You can drop your head more when you have that helmet on.
Okay, Joaquin Rodriguez coming up to the first checkpoint. Hejdahl went through here with a time of 13:55. De Gent was 13:56. Rodriguez starting the day with a 31-second advantage over Hejdahl on the GC. Oh, look at this. He's almost made up the whole time already. Check out this gap. So, Ryder Hesjedal has made up a huge chunk of his deficit to Joaquim Rodriguez just at the first time check on the course in Milan. Ryder Hesjedal was 1 second faster at the first split. And the time 24:32 for De Hent at checkpoint number 2.
Well, that's not the time trial of De Hent's life, and he was concerned about being fatigued after the massive effort yesterday. So meanwhile, Hesjedal here, wow.
Whoa, right along the barriers.
Absolutely putting everything on the line here right now. Maybe a little too much there, considering how good he was in the first time check. He could probably hold back just a tad in the corner.
See that again. Some technical corners on this course. And there's some U-turns, some 90-degree corners.
He was trying to stay in the extensions through that corner and dropped out of those at the last second.
Now Rodriguez also a little difficulty on the corners, going wide through there. Now we have 3 90-degree corners in the final 500 meters, so that's something to look out for. We have some tight corners on the course, a few U-turns. And now Ivan Basso trying to hang on to a top 5 position today. 2-time Giro winner. His team rode on the front more than any other squad at this year's race. Strongest team for the mountains, hoping that it would all pay off in the final week. He would bleed guys off his wheel, but it didn't work out that way.
Look at those tracks right as they approach the corner as Rodriguez drives through and then accelerating out of it.
Scarponi coming up to the second intermediate split. And that's what Piva said, that Rodriguez is going to have to really sprint out of those corners. That's one thing that he can do, but can he do that and get some power on the straight, long, flat sections?
It's not looking good right now.
Domenico Pozzovivo at the finish near the Duomo.
That's a great ride by Pozzovivo. This guy is tiny. He's thrilled with that. Look at that little pump of the fist there. 2:21 down. Realize that Godrej just lost over 4 minutes.
Last man on the course, Joaquim Rodriguez, 10th day in the pink jersey. Update puts Ryder Hesjedal, who we see on the left, into the Maglia Rosa by 3 seconds on the road.
He was just bouncing around there.
Now he's by 9 seconds.
He picked up more time, but Rodriguez is coming back just a little bit in terms of not losing time so quickly.
And that's not about the time trial lead. That is the GC lead for Hesjedal, virtually on the road.
Replay of Hesjedal there. Hesjedal is really going for it here. He is taking every chance.
So a 10-second lead at the last point we just saw. Now officially we'll get the mark at the second checkpoint for Ryder Hesjedal.
I wonder if part of what happened to Ryder there is that he was so cross-eyed from the effort, he just sort of misjudged the bumps in the corner.
De Hent with a time of 24:32. Exactly the same time as Hesjedal goes through there. So De Hent not a concern for Hesjedal anymore. And we'll see how much time Rodriguez has lost behind him now. This is back to De Hent up the road.
Amazing. De Hent was 1 second slower than Hesjedal at the first time check. Exactly the same at the second time check. Hesjedal's got to be very pleased that he had 1:47 on De Hent coming into the day.
Now imagine if De Hent had ridden into the race lead yesterday.
Or within 15 seconds of it.
This would have been a nail-biter all the way to the finish.
Absolutely.
So it was Hesjedal's singular performance to gain back that 2 minutes at the upper reaches of the Stelvio that's really provided the margin and the difference coming into this time trial today. Now look at the time just slipping away for Joaquim Rodriguez. Starting the day with a 31-second lead on Hesjedal, lost almost all of it before the first time check, now at the second split. After Hesjedal went through 24:32, it's 25:16 for Joaquim Rodriguez. That's a 44-second difference. Ryder Hesjedal continues to ride into the virtual lead at the Giro d'Italia. Damiano Cunego at the finish.
Cunego not a great time trialist, so no concern really for him not to be in the top 10. A bummer for him not to win a stage, and he's one of the darlings of Italian cycling.
Thomas De Hent, at this point, the Belgian riding for a podium. Pink jersey out of reach, so looking to finish in the top 3, starting the day in 4th behind Rodriguez, Hejdahl, and Scarponi.
And the question is his podium place going to be 3rd, or does he still have a chance at 2nd?
De Hent with that huge top 3 performance in a long-time trial at the Tour de France last summer. One of the best time trialists among the GC contenders coming into this final TT in Milan today at the Giro.
Looks like Rodriguez currently is riding on a pace to preserve 2nd place overall. But it's not over till it's over in these time trials.
And the reception for the 2-time Giro winner, Ivan Basso. Basso starting the day in 5th position. And a warm welcome for the Italian in his favorite race. Basso finishes the Giro with a TT time of 35:12.
Ivan Basso's time, 35 minutes and 12 seconds. The Italian who's battled all the way through the mountains.
All right, so out on the road, Ryder Hejdahl has the GC lead by 13 seconds, according to the numbers at the 2nd time check. Here's De Hent, now coming into the final 350 meters. Again, looking for a podium spot, battling Michele Scarponi for what looks to be the bottom step of the podium. De Hent just about tied on time with Hejdahl at the first 2 splits. Now really going for it at the finish alongside the Duomo. Again, Marco Pinotti is the overall leader on the stage, and De Hent is into 5th, 34:07.
Great ride by him. I actually think he didn't ride hard enough out on the course. He had a little too much pop coming out of the corner, so maybe didn't pace himself quite right.
All right, Scarponi started the day 27 seconds ahead of Thomas De Hent in the GC. So that's the battle for the podium. Scarponi outside the time.
It has slipped through his fingers. Thomas De Hent turned the podium upside down a little bit there.
So Thomas De Hent riding himself onto the podium. Michele Scarponi riding himself off the podium. And Marco Pinotti, knowing he's probably just moments away from a time trial victory.
Look at that, as Scarponi almost crashing inside the final 50 meters, putting the power to the pedals out of the saddle, and the bike getting a little bit squirrely on him in the front end.
Joaquim Rodriguez, shoulders rocking a little bit here. Alperito won 2 stages at this year's race, moved into the pink jersey for the first time with the stage win into Assisi with the uphill finish on stage number 10. He's been in a top 5 position at 5 Grand Tours over the last 4 seasons, but really wanted his first Grand Tour win at the Giro this year, but it doesn't look like it's meant to be. Here comes Hejdahl towards the finish.
It's history in the making. Ryder Hejdahl is getting it done.
For only the 2nd time in Giro history, the pink jersey is poised to change hands on the final day, with Ryder Hejdahl headed towards the finish. Start of the day, 31 seconds behind the pink jersey, made up almost all of that deficit before the first time check. Has been adding to his lead the rest of the way, and now Hejdahl crosses the finish line 34:15, and a time that is likely to win him the Giro d'Italia.
34 minutes and 15 seconds. He finishes 6th fastest.
After an absolutely savage couple of days in the mountains, he was totally put under pressure yesterday. He still had the strength and the poise to put in a very good time trial today. And Rodriguez now, he needs a miracle to somehow hold on to that pink jersey.
Last time we saw the official data out on course, Hejdahl had a 13-second virtual lead. is crossing the finish line with a time of 34:15. So as he is mobbed, we wait for the final man on the course.
Perito has actually found a little something more in the latter part of the course. He lost so much in the first third, and so it is not over yet.
Now here comes Joaquim Rodriguez, the last man on course at the Giro d'Italia. Again, 34:15, the finishing time for Ryder Hesjedal. After starting the day, 31 seconds down on Rodriguez.
Ryder Hesjedal there moments ago, big kiss and hug with his new wife from just December last year, Ashley. They have got to be thrilled, but it's still a little bit nervy right now because it's not over till this man, Rodriguez, crosses the finish line.
If he's outside 34:46, Hesjedal's the winner. A long last kilometer for Perito. 700 meters, still some technical corners. Hesjedal leading at every checkpoint on Rodriguez. 10 days in the pink jersey, trying to preserve it on the final day as Hesjedal waits. Ryder Hesjedal watching and waiting. Joaquim Rodriguez into the final few hundred meters. 3:50 to go at this point. Again, 34:46. If he's outside that time, Hesjedal is the winner.
This is very close. It could be one of the closest ever.
Joaquim Rodriguez still with one turn here, and that is gonna do it. Ryder Hesjedal wins the Giro d'Italia, the first Canadian to ever win a Grand Tour. Rodriguez with a gutsy effort near the finish, but not able to hang on to the Maglia Rosa. And the Maple Leaf flies in Milan.
The weight of the nation. Ryder Hesjedal, he has done it. No Canadians ever finished on the final podium in a Grand Tour.
Oh, Rodriguez never gave up. He dug deep. Maybe deeper than ever before in an individual time trial, but he knew the odds were stacked against him coming in. As the 31-year-old from Victoria, British Columbia, Ryder Hesjedal, in his third appearance at the Giro, picks up his first ever Grand Tour victory. And we'll come back with more on the post-race report right after this.
Barracuda, their first ever Grand Tour overall victory.
First time they were riding for the GC at the Giro, and they win it. Hesjedal, the 31-year-old who knew from the early moments of a training camp last fall that he was going to make this race an early season priority. He was going to be the team leader at the Giro. One of the closest finishes in Giro history. The closest was 11 seconds back in 1948. So it really did come down to the wire on the final day in the time trial in Milan, with Thomas de Gendt taking the final podium spot, meaning that it's the first time since 1995 no Italian has been on the podium in their home Grand Tour.
That's got to sting.
Ryder Hesjedal, the former mountain biker, with big performances in the mountains and then the time trial to get the Giro win. The famous Piazza del Duomo, first hosting the Giro back in 1972, really the spiritual home of this race. The large Duomo Cathedral, one of the largest in Europe. And look at that crowd down below in this symbolic plaza of Milan, second largest city in the country. And now waiting for the podium and the presentation of the pink jersey to our winner, Ryder Hesjedal.
The location
for the man in third, the Belgian Thomas de Gendt, who is in this spot because of his performance yesterday on the Stelvio. The solo win that almost earned him the pink jersey, but it put him in a spot that with a good time trial today, he could finish on the podium. That's exactly what he did.
de Gendt had the ride of his career yesterday, and Ryder Hesjedal had the most defining moment of his career. It wasn't just the ride of his career, it was what set him up to win this race overall today.
And Joaquim Rodriguez, who celebrated his birthday earlier in week number 1 of the Giro d'Italia, wore the Maglia Rosa more than anybody else at this year's race. 10 days.
De Hent's never been on a Grand Tour final podium. Rodriguez, 4th in the race last year, 4th in the Vuelta. He's never been on a Grand Tour podium. Ryder Hesjedal has never finished on a Grand Tour podium. All three of these guys experiencing something brand new.
He's got his kids, his father, his family is here with him on this final day in Milan. And he keeps plugging away. He's getting closer.
Got the kids decked out in the shirts that say Purito on them. And he's certainly been a fighter in this race.
Now said he came into the Giro in the best condition of his career. His goal at the start of the season was to win a Classic and the Giro. He won Flèche Wallonne, so one of those was checked off. Now he just needed the Giro, and he comes up 1 day short.
Now the big obstacle was Ryder Hesjedal came into this race with a form of his career as well. And unfortunately for Purito, Hesjedal's form was a little bit better.
Rodriguez, top 5 at 5 Grand Tours the last 4 seasons, finally gets his podium, and now we will see pink. Ryder Hesjedal rode for 3 teams in the span of 4 seasons before joining this Garmin outfit back in 2008. Really supported Christian Vande Velde's top 5 performance at the Tour de France that year. And since then, he has been growing and evolving into a Grand Tour type of leader. Got the word last November he would be the leader for this Giro. And now he wears pink at the most important time at the end of the final day.
Oh, what a feeling. No stage wins, but consistency is what makes it happen. Obviously, their team won the team time trial. That set him up, always kept him close. And interestingly enough, Rodriguez's team was 2nd in the team time trial. Once again, showing how important individual and team time trials are. But Hesjedal puts that jersey on the most important day of all here.
And how big is it for Canada? Hesjedal has a home in Maui, spends much of the off-season training there. Pals around with some celebrity friends like Woody Harrelson and Owen Wilson, who have come to visit him at the Tour de France and other big races. And I think other people are going to want a little bit of his time as well now that he has won one of the biggest races in the world, capturing the Giro today in Milan.
A battle, and it was not a done deal coming into today. And look at how close Rodriguez was to holding on to pink after everything was said and done.
Canadian national anthem. Never before has that anthem been played at the end of a Grand Tour. It is not a hockey game. And with no Canadian teams left in the Stanley Cup playoffs, Hesjedal has Canada to himself today.
One of the outside men for the overall in terms of the favorites when it started. He has finished it off and made history.